Alright, welcome to this live video. I am going to go through 200 of my own raw photos and 100 of images that you guys sent to me to test out. Some of these will be pretty simple, just one-click applications, and then others will need a little bit more tweaking based on the environment, how I shot the photos, etc. I'll kind of walk through if there were problems with my raw photos, like maybe I shot it too warm, too cool, my exposure wasn't correct, etc. But really, the main gist is I just want to apply the presets and show you how little or how much tweaking they will need. If you're watching this on my website right now, you will notice that the right panel, which shows you all of the editing settings, is blocked out. That's just on purpose because obviously you could just copy all of the edits and stuff and make the presets on your own. But anybody who buys the presets, you will have access to this full video if you want to see the exact things that I'm tweaking. I'll mention as I'm going through, like, you know, I'm changing the temperature, I'm making it a little bit warmer, I'm decreasing the highlights, etc. Like, I'll walk you through what I'm tweaking so you can see in real time like what's happening to the image and why it's happening. But again, like those who have the presets, you'll have this full video and you can watch it and see the right panel in action as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm just going to go through one by one each of the 200 images first, and then I'll switch to the images that you guys sent in and I'll just explain everything along the way. So I'm going to start out with this first image. I'm going to crop this in a little bit first to kind of change the perspective of it. And I'll do a little spot removal on this. Sometimes I like to crop and like remove anything before I actually edit the colors of the image, just so I can kind of get a feel for more of the final look that I'm going for. So I did that first, and then I'm going to go ahead in and choose my preset. So for my work specifically, I tend to do number 1 and number 2 more than anything. I just like to keep things very natural. The colors very consistent with how things look in real life. So the ones that are kind of more film inspired, I love to use for portraits as well. Like, I think that that's kind of the moment of the day that really shines for having those like a little bit heavier edits. Normally for stuff like details and ceremony, I try and keep those as like true to life as possible, but really any of the presets will work throughout the day. There are some weddings where I will use almost all of the presets and I still feel like the colors are consistent all throughout the entire gallery. So I'm not limited to like, oh, I can only use the natural ones or I can only use the film ones like for one gallery. I can really just pick and choose and use any of them and it still looks consistent across the board. But anyways, enough talking. So for this one, I'm just going to kind of browse through the different ones and see what I'm feeling. If I want to keep it more on the natural side versus if I want something a little bit heavier. I feel like for this one, I could do both. I might honestly duplicate it. So I'm going to do one of the natural ones. And to be honest, I probably wouldn't even have to tweak this. Actually, I'm going to go with number 2. I might just up the shadows a tiny bit, like around her head and the back of the car here. But that would be the only thing that I would do to this preset. If I want to go for something a little bit heavier, I think I might go with number 7 because I just really like how creamy the highlights are and how much fade there is in it. However, I am going to decrease the exposure a little bit and also up the temperature because it's just a little too cool. So I would have this preset, which is just very natural, or something a little bit heavier like this. For this next photo, I'm going to go ahead and just, again, get rid of all of this stuff first. So I'm just spot removing little things that I feel like distract from the image. And I'm going to crop it in just a little bit and then go through the presets. So I think for this one, I might again go for number 2, but I'm going to do a slight tweak on this. So I'm going to start by adjusting my temperature, making that a little bit warmer. And I might even pull the tint up slightly more pink as well. And then I'm going to decrease my exposure some. The only thing I'm going to change about this one is down in the color grading. I'm going to move the shadows from kind of more of this green color to something warmer. So if I drag this around the circle, you can kind of see how that's like affecting just that particular part of the image. So it was very green. Because I just feel like there's so much green in the photo, I'm going to lean into something a little bit warmer. And I think I'm going to go kind of more with like this orangey yellow color, and then I'm just going to pull this in towards the center, so I decrease the amount just a little bit. And then just final tweaks, I'm actually going to pull the tint slightly back to the green side, and then that would be the before and after for that image. I'm going to crop this picture in first, and I think for this one I'm going to go a little bit heavier on the edit, so I might start with number 9 for this one, and just because of the lighting in this picture I'm going to have to edit this a little bit. Also, one thing I want to mention first is the way that I use these presets has a lot to do with the amount applied or the opacity of the preset. So every preset is going to be applied at 100%. There are some times where I'm like, it's too much. I want the foundation of the preset, but I don't want it to be so intense. So I might drag it down to like 75%. And then there's actually other times where I love the preset and I love it so much that I want to apply even more. So I'll actually drive it above 100%. Normally I feel like I don't go above like 130%, but sometimes I do kind of pull the preset in to higher strength to get more of the effect applied. Anyways, I'm going to start by decreasing my exposure. And I really love everything about this preset. The only thing that I'm going to change really, again, is the shadows, just for whatever like the specific scene that we were using. It just was like the greens were really blue, so it's not vetting as well for this image. So I'm just going to go back down to the shadows. And if I hover over the color grading over this little eye, I can kind of see like what's being changed by the specific panel. So I know it's probably going to be mostly the shadows. So I'm actually going to bring the shadows back towards the center. And I might actually leave a tiny bit, but I'm going to bring it more towards like the yellow orange side again, so that I get a little bit more warmth into the image. And then the only thing I might change is there's a little bit of something going on here with the veil. I'm just going to do a little spot removal on that so that it doesn't look like kind of a bubble effect. But there you have the before and after for that preset. For flash specifically, my favorites are normally number 8 and number 9. For the film ones, I just love the intensity, and I feel like the lighting is so even that I can just really get away with using the intense presets. So I am going to kind of toggle between the two. So I'm just going to do both because they have such different looks, but I love them both. I'll start with number 9. This is the one that we just applied. And for flash, I love having kind of the bluer, greener shadows. So down here in the same color grading panel, we have, you can like see how that is affecting that. I love the way that that like changes the photo. So I honestly am not going to tweak anything about this photo. I'm just going to leave it as is, but I am going to duplicate it and apply number 8 instead and kind of show you the difference, because I do end up using 8 a lot for my flash photos. So for this one, I might actually drag the intensity down a little bit. I'm going to maybe do like 90%, and then I'll start with correcting the exposure. I'm going to change the tint and the temperature a little bit. And then I might go down and mess with the tone curves a little bit. So I'm going to delete one of these control points and then just lift up the shadows here to kind of make it a little bit more, I don't know what the word, almost like muddy in the shadows, but in a good way. I'm not going to drag it up that much, but you can kind of see like if you drag it to the right, you like really darken those blacks. And then if you lift it up, you really lighten them. So I'm just going to do a slight amount so that it still has more of that kind of like older film vibe, but not too much. So there we have the before of this image, the first preset, and then one that's a little bit more true to color. It's not letting me. I'm going to copy these, crop and remove, and I'm going to duplicate this just so that you can see. So that is the before and after of number 8, and then that's the before and after of number 9. So this one's just still great for flash, but it's a little bit more of the natural color. All right, so this photo was shot at a terrible white balance. If I go in and correct this is what the camera thinks is auto white balance. I probably would say that this was like the correct white balance to be shooting at. So clearly I did not do that. Sometimes that happens in the moment. But I'm going to go in and edit this one. And then really one of the biggest things is going to be the white balance. And that's something that I learned a lot while testing other people's presets as well, is that the way that the presets are applied has so much to do with the white balance that you shot at. I've seen a lot of people shoot really warm, like I would consider this to be really warm, and I've seen a lot of people shoot really cold, and I feel like it looks worse if you shoot really cold, just because like it makes the color so wonky. So if you're ever applying a preset and you're like, oh my goodness, this looks crazy, first adjust your temperature and your tint and then go from there, because the preset should look fine on any image. It's just a matter of the white balance that you shot with. So for this photo, I think I'm going to go with number 3. I tend to use 3 a lot for indoor images. I just like the way that it messes with the highlights and kind of has like this overall softness and the like yellow orange colors to it. So I'm going to apply that one, crop it in a little bit, and then also because I'm just so like type A about all this stuff, I'm just going to get rid of some of the little distractions first. Okay, so now I'm going to adjust my white balance. So I'm going to bring this temperature back down to what I think it should be. I'm going to keep it about right there. And then I'll mess with my tint as well to see if I want it slightly on the pinker side or maybe a little bit more green. I think like right there would be a good happy medium. And then a huge part of the process for me is always in the color mixer. I'm constantly changing the hue and the saturation of red, orange, yellow. And then if I'm dealing with outdoor photos, I do a lot with the green as well. So I'll just like go into the hue of the orange and kind of change that and make sure that I have the skin tones exactly where I want them to be. So I think hers was honestly pretty neutral, but I might lift up the luminance a little bit, as well as, actually I'm going to drag it slightly towards the yellow side. And then make sure that the reds, which usually just pin on like the lips and some parts of the face, I'm just going to make sure that those are the right color. And then that's probably it for this photo. So that would be the before and after. Very simple, really was just applying the preset and changing the white balance. All right, now this next photo, I actually shot at the correct white balance. It's funny the difference between the two. I just had time to correct it. I think for this photo, I was like switching between flash and ambient lighting, so I didn't have time to change the white balance. And I shoot on Kelvin. I don't shoot on auto white balance. So when I had the time to correct it, I went and did this. So I don't know if I want to use 3 on this one. I might, but I might actually try something different as well. I think I'm going to go with something a little bit more faded. I might, let's see. I'm going to go with 6 to start with. And first bringing down my temperature back to a normal place. I'm going to bring the tint down just a little bit as well. And then with this one, I'm not really liking the colors of their skin, so I'm going to go back down and change the orange hues a little bit. So I'm going to move them slightly towards the yellow. I'm also going to desaturate the orange a little bit. And then as I can see here, like the yellow is dominating most of the image. So I'm going to actually decrease the yellow saturation a little bit. And then make sure that I'm not affecting the greens too much, which I'm not. Decrease the orange a little bit more. And do a little crop in on this. And there would be the before and after. All right, so with this photo, I'm gonna do, I think, a little bit of a heavier edit as well. I think I'm gonna do number 9. I think I used like this kind of base preset for this entire wedding. I just loved the way it looked on all the photos. So upping the temperature slightly, decreasing my exposure, and then I'm gonna go in and really make sure that I have her skin where I want it to be. I think for this one, I'm gonna go back to the tone curve, delete these control points a little bit, and then bring the shadows back down slightly. So this is kind of where they were at, which I love on this preset, but for this photo, I'm gonna just drag them down a little bit more. And then that would be the before and after. And then also, I probably won't do this on every image because I know nobody wants to sit and watch this play out, but I would, like, I always remove everything like this so the photo is as clean as possible, but we'll just see. Sometimes it works in Lightroom, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it worked pretty well. I just have to get rid of this shadow. And there we go. So that is the before and after for this photo. All right, now this one has some interesting lighting. I liked the way that the light was kind of highlighting the front of her body, but it's definitely going to be one that's a little bit strange to edit. Sometimes the auto transform also just does a terrible job, so I'm just going to leave this one as is. I'm going to rotate it slightly and just crop in, and then we'll edit from there. All right. So we'll go through the presets. I think actually, I really like the way number 2 looks. I also know I could do something pretty good with number 3. So just really quick, this is kind of how I would apply number 2. I'm going to just up the shadows a little bit, make it slightly warmer, and then that would be just a very simple way to edit this. But I'm going to try number 3 as well, and I'm going to increase the intensity. So I'm going to take it from 100% and make it more like 130%. Actually, I'm going to do like 125. And then I'm going to start by upping my exposure, and then I don't really need to do much with her coloring. I might actually add a little bit of saturation on the orange and then just make sure that the hue of it is correct. And something I remember doing for this photo specifically was I went into like the masking tool and I basically like highlighted this kind of front area. Her face especially, and just kind of brightened them a little bit so it was a little more intense. And then I'm going to create a second mask and then put this one just on her face so that I can make sure I have enough detail there. Alright, so this was number 3. That was the before and after, and then if I wanted something a little bit more natural, I had it on 2, and I just upped the warmth of it a little bit. And also I forgot the shadows. So yeah, there you have a couple different edits for that photo. All right, now we're getting into the greens a little bit. This day, these greens were definitely more on the yellow side. Sometimes you'll get more blue greens, sometimes you'll get more yellow greens. This one definitely on the warm side, but that's totally fine. Get rid of that real quick. All right, so again, like normally for 90% of the photos that I edit, I'm using 1 or I'm using 2. It just depends if I want a little bit more of like a warm edit or if I want some of those blues in the shadows. If I up the intensity of this, maybe do like 110% and then just decrease the exposure and go into my greens. Actually, I know this photo is going to register more for the yellows. The greens really aren't going to register that much. So I'm going to up my greens just slightly more towards I'm upping my yellow slightly more towards the green side and then desaturating the yellows. All right, so there's the before and after for that. All right, this was just a fun little detail shot, kind of caught in the moment, but it ended up being really pretty. If I went with this photo for 1 and 2, I'd probably do 1 because I don't love the blue shadows up in her hair for number 2, but I might try and see if I like any of the other ones first. I think actually, I'm torn between these two. I'm going to go with number 7, and then again, I'm going to just decrease the shadows slightly in the tone curve. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to up the intensity of it a little bit. And then I'm just going to go back to the tone curve and decrease those shadows. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So dragging that down in the tone curve, pulling that back in, and then I can kind of see there's like a little bit of green, a little too much of what I would prefer in the shadows. So this is like a really blue-green right now. I'm going to drag that more towards like a yellow-green again, and then just decrease the intensity by pulling it towards the center. So there is my before and after. All right, for photos like this, definitely keeping this on the natural side. I'm gonna probably go in with number 1 and decrease the exposure just a tad, up the shadows for their dresses a little bit. And that is it for that photo. Very simple, very natural. I think for this photo, I mean, I could go any route. I could do any of these. I think I'll do 2 of them. So if I applied the same preset as before, I would just up the shadows like I had it. Very simple. And then if I wanted to do something a little bit heavier, a little bit creamier in the highlights and the midtones, a little bit warmer as well, I'll just do number 6, and then you have those 2 edits. All right, so I know I said also when I try and keep a ceremony as natural as possible, but I feel like for photos like this, I can really get away with doing more. So what I would probably do in a situation like this is I would keep the photo whole, apply one of the more natural presets, I'd probably go with number 1 for this one. There's your before and after, and then I would duplicate this, crop it in big time, and then apply something a little bit heavier. I think I'm going to go in with number 8 and then just decrease the exposure a little bit. And then there you have it. So that's the before image of this one, and then you have this cropped photo. All right, so this one was shot a little bit pinker. I would say that this is my normal like white balance and tint, but that's kind of where it was shot. That's totally fine. I'm going to go in with number 2, decrease the exposure, up the shadows, and then just take the tint down a little bit, a couple notches. And then I'm going to use the guided transform on this one and just go in and correct this a little bit because the auto transform is not taking how it should be. And then crop that in, and there is your before and after. Okay, so now when we go to portraits, there's definitely more wiggle room. I feel like for creativity, I like going a little more intense on the presets for these ones. I'm gonna do number 8 for this picture, and just right away, I really don't have anything that I would change for this. I love the way it messes with the highlights. It just makes the greens and the yellows super vibrant. So that one for me is gonna be 1 click, and I'm not gonna change anything. All right, for this photo, it's gonna be a heavy crop. And I think I'm gonna do a black and white for this one because I haven't done any yet. Kind of forgot about those. So also, let me just run through all the black and whites really quick. So classic is just your typical black and white. I use a lot if I just want a standard black and white. Faded has a lot more like depth in the shadows. You can kind of see the difference between those. So I love using this if I'm just trying to like really make an image pop. Documentary I use a lot for candids. I also sometimes use it for flash if I don't want the intensity to be like crazy. But then again, a lot of times for flash, I will use the editorial one because I feel like it just makes the highlights look amazing. And then my favorite black and white ones are number 5 and 6. So they're very similar to each other. Number 5 is based off of a very popular film stock called Ilford HP5. And then number 6 just has yellows added to the shadows of the image. So it kind of produces like this older film look. And one thing that I have in here is these little grain modifiers. If I apply one of the black and white presets at like a regular, I shot the photo like this, then I'll just leave it. But because I cropped in, sometimes the grain can be a little too much. So I can either remove the grain or I can do a little bit of grain, a little more, a little more, a little more. Obviously the number of pluses kind of indicates how strong the grain is. So I would just decrease it a little bit for this one because we're so close. But that would be the before and after for black and white. All right, here we are again with some flash. So I auto transformed that one, cropped it in, getting rid of this little dot on the floor. And I'm probably gonna go in with, oops, I should have done the auto transform second. Number 8. And very simple, I'm just gonna decrease the exposure. I'm gonna make the tint very slightly more on the pink side and decrease my temperature a little bit. And that is the before and after. It's a little easier to see. I'm going to turn the auto transform off just so you can see the colors being applied. I might actually do one more thing and decrease the highlights a little bit just so that you can see kind of more of the waves and the detail in her dress. But that would be that photo. All right, now this one was also shot at a little bit too warm of a white balance. This is probably the correct white balance for this image, but mine was a little warmer. That's okay. I'm actually going to go in, I think it's always so hard for me to decide which ones I actually want to use. I think I'm going to do number 2 just to keep it natural, but I also kind of want the blues in the shadows. And then sometimes I'll start out with the eyedropper tool and I'll bring it to the white, although it's not always that helpful because this doesn't look very good, but it does kind of correct the temperature and the tint to a good ratio, and then I can just mess with the temperature a little bit on its own. So I'm going to bring the temperature back up a little warmer, increase my exposure, bring the temperature back down, put on auto transform, crop this in some, and there's your before and after. And then again, I'll turn the transform off so you can see it a little more clearly. That is the edit on it. All right, another really green photo. So I will spare you all the edits for this one. Actually, it probably won't take that long, so I'm just gonna draw all over these little fence posts and delete those. Okay, so now we have our quickly edited photo, and I'm going to go in with, let's see which one looks best. Ooh, that's going to be tough for me. Okay, I think I'm going to go in with number 5 for this one. I like number 5 a lot when I'm shooting midday greens. There's a couple more photos in this that I'll use it in, and I just feel like it tones it down perfectly. For this photo specifically, I'm going to up the intensity, maybe like 110%, and then I'm going to just increase the greens and yellow saturation back a little bit. I don't want to decrease it too much, but I obviously want it somewhat, and then I'm going to drag the hue of the yellow slightly more towards the green side, and then there's the before and after. All right, now this was a direct photo with the sun straight above us, so the contrast is going to have to go down quite a bit for this one. I think I'm going to do I'll do number 3 because number 3 is naturally a slightly lower contrast. So I'm just going to use that as one click and we'll leave it as is. All right, now this is one of my cooler photos. The white balance probably should have been around here, so I'm going to have to just go the reverse of what I'm normally shooting too warm, but sometimes I shoot too cool. I'm going to do I think I'm going to go number 1 on this one. I'm going to increase the intensity to about 120%. Go ahead in with my auto transform and rotating. And then I'm going to up the temperature. I'm going to take the tint slightly more towards the pink side, up my exposure, and there's the before and after. And then also for a photo like this, I'm not going to do the generative AI again on like the shoe and the paper and stuff. That's typically something that I would do, but I will get rid of this little hanger string in her dress, which might have to be AI. Okay, yes, there we go. So just getting rid of that little string that hangs the dress. All right. I'm going to go in very simple with this one as well. I like the way that number 2 is adding the blues for this one. And also, I apologize for using number 1 and 2 so much, but like I said, it's like 90% of my work. So I just use it a lot. If you want your photos to look like mine, just use 1 and 2 a lot. So yeah, very simple before and after. All right, now this photo could go a lot of different ways if I want to make it a little more moodier or if I want to keep it natural. This photo is very similar. It's because it's shot in the same place, so I might do one more natural and one a little moodier. I'll do this one natural, and then the other ones can be the moody ones. So I'm going to do number 1 for this one, auto transform, decrease my exposure, and there you have it. I might actually, because some of these flowers were purple, I'll go in and re-up the saturation of the purple. So one thing I should mention, I guess now that I'm here, is Something that I personally do a lot is I decrease blues and purples saturation, because a lot of times the dress and the white shirt that a guy typically wears will ping as blue, and there will be some pretty strong examples in the rest of the photos that I'll show why I'm doing that. I don't think her dress was registering as any blue in it, but I have a lot of the presets set to desaturate the blue and purple because I just hate it when shirts and dresses are not perfectly white. But if I ever see in a photo, I'm like, oh, there's purple flowers, then I'm going to re-up that saturation. Or if I really want the sky to pop, I can bring the blue saturation up too. So that's that photo. And then for this one, I'm going to do something a little bit faded, I think. I'll start with number 7, go back and auto transform this, decrease the exposure, and then I'm going to bring back up the purple saturation so you can see the flowers have a little bit more color into them. And then I am going to, I like that mostly as it is. I think the greens could be altered a little bit. I'm going to move them slightly more to the blue side. And then see if I want to change anything in the shadows. I think I might just make it very slightly warmer in the shadows. So there is the before and after of that photo. All right, so this was some fun lighting to shoot in. One moment it was sunny, one moment it was cloudy. It was just constantly back and forth. So for this photo, I am going to, sorry, it's like my OCD brain. I just have to get rid of all these little things that were like growing in the grass. Okay, that's a little better. I can manage. All right, so hold on, one more. Okay. All right, so I think for this one, I'm gonna apply one of the presets, but I'm definitely gonna have to change the greens a little bit. So I'd probably do number 2 for this one, and then I would just change the greens, but I'm going to do number 5 just for reference because I kind of like the way it makes the castle look. So I'm going to increase the saturation, or the intensity, sorry, of it. And then I'm also going to increase the saturation of the overall photo. And then I'm going to go into my greens, move them back towards the blue-green side, up the saturation of them slightly. We're going to put on that auto transform, crop it in, and there's the before and after, and I'll show you again without the transform. Whoops. All right, there's the before and after of that color edit. All right, so going into a portrait, and definitely harnessing kind of the unique lighting in this area, I'm going to do one of the film edits. I think number 6 is probably going to look really good for this one. So I'm doing number 6. I'm going to decrease my temperature slightly. Crop this in a little more. And there's the before and after. I definitely like my greens to be a little bit more on the cool side. So you could have them more on the warm, or you could have them really green. I like them to be on that cooler side and a little bit desaturated. That's like my personal preference. All right. Now this is an indoor photo, which was shot at a pretty decent white balance. I'm going to do number 3 for this photo. Very simple edit to go on top of it. It really doesn't need like that much correction. I'm going to decrease my exposure a tiny bit and then just make sure that I'm okay with the colors of everybody's skin. So let's see. I think I'm going to change. Sometimes I just have to like click before and after over and over and over again until I see what I want to see. So I'm going to go in and I think I'm going to slightly raise their skin towards the yellow side and then decrease the oranges a very tiny bit. And then make sure that the reds are registering correctly. All right, so that's going to be my before and after for that photo. Another green heavy picture. I edited pretty much this entire gallery with number 1 and 2, so I'm going to stick with that. Decrease my exposure, up the temperature, change my tint a little bit more towards the pink side. And I'm going to up the saturation of the orange as well, just to make their faces kind of have a little more color in it. And then very quick and simple before and after. All right. This was a scene from the same elopement, but the lighting had changed quite a bit. I still edited it with number 2 though. Some things never change. Very simple. You can just see like how one click on this like smooths out some of the highlights, does some nice stuff with the tone curve, and just really makes those greens look like a beautiful, consistent color. All right, here we have a makeup photo that just had amazing indoor lighting. I'm gonna go a little bit heavier on this one. Again, if I wanted to keep the whole gallery very natural, I would just go with number 1 or 2, but I think I'm gonna go with something a little bit heavier, so I might do number 7, and I'm just going to decrease the exposure, up the temperature slightly, and then I'm going to mess with the shadows and the color grading a little bit, bringing them more to like a yellow green, and then decreasing the intensity of that slightly. All right, so we have a before and after for this one, and then I might actually add a little bit of grain to this as well. Okay. All right, for this photo, I might honestly keep kind of with the same vibe because I just love the way that this one was edited a little bit more intense. I'm going to go in with I'm going to do 2 for this one. So number 6 is just going to be very simple. Do auto transform, take the temperature down, and then you have before and after. But if I want to do something a little bit more intense, I'm thinking I might do number 9. And right now it looks a little crazy. It's okay. I'm going to decrease the intensity to about 75%, decrease my exposure, decrease my temperature, and then I'm going to have to mess with her skin a little bit here because I've desaturated things quite a bit. So let's see in the color mixer. I'm going to up the luminance of the orange. And then again, sometimes like the best trick to see like what a panel is doing is just to do the before and after of like the little eye icon on each panel. So I can see the oranges and the yellows are being desaturated. But I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to leave that one as is. Also, something to sometimes look out for is a lot of times with blondes, the yellow can register as, like you can see this is affecting your hair. So sometimes you want to make sure that if their hair's looking a little bit green, that it's not doing that. You can either desaturate it or you can just make sure that it's kind of turned towards the more like yellow-orange side. And then for this photo specifically, this took me so long, so I'm not going to include it in this video, but I basically pulled this into Photoshop and removed all of these things down here, as well as this, as well as extended the wall here. So if you see this photo on my Instagram and it looks a little different, that's because I did a lot of Photoshopping to kind of clean up this moment, but because it was so intensive, I'm not going to do it for this video. All right, this one, I'm going to go black and white because I just feel like it really is the moment. I'm going to crop this in first, and I'm going to do, I think, Ilford for this one. Maybe I'll do documentary. Very simple. But if I wanted to do the Ilford, I could, and I would just decrease the grain because I cropped it so far. And up the shadows for his jacket a little bit. Decrease my exposure. And I might bring down the shadows in the tone curve a little bit. So there you go. All right, for this photo, I'm already seeing a couple things. So the sky is looking very dark. The blue is kind of like a purple blue. So that might be something that I have to edit after I apply a preset. I also am going to just remove these little distractions here. I don't know what this is, but I hated it, and I edited it out of about 30 photos in this gallery. Okay, perfect. So I definitely want to keep this one natural. I think I'm going to go with number 3 because it's just one of the most subtle ones. Auto transform, rotate it slightly. And then I really like the way the building looks and the couple looks. The sky might tweak a little bit. I'm going to up the luminance of it, and then I'm also going to change the hue to be slightly more of like a greenish blue. And I'm going to desaturate it a little bit as well. So there is the before and after. Beautiful. All right, for this photo here, I'm going to go in with something simple. Just do number 2, auto transform, bring it in a little bit, and there you go. All right, I saved these 2 photos to show one black and white and one color. I have to do it, I'm sorry. I've got to get rid of all this stuff on the roof. This is like seriously one of the most important things to me in editing, is just removing distractions. So for this one, I am probably going to do faded black and white. I'll go ahead and click that auto transform once I've applied the preset. Bring this in, frame them with the trees, increase my exposure, and there you go, before and after. Now if I want to keep this moment in color, let's go ahead and remove this again. And we will apply, I'm going to go with number 1, a little bit intenser. We'll do 120%, decrease exposure, up the tint slightly pinker, and there you go. All right, this moment I wanted to keep very clean, very like natural luxury look, so I'm probably going to go with number 4 on this one, although number 3 looks beautiful too. It's just very subtle. You know what? I'm just going to go with number 3. I like it. All right, there you go. Oh, also this might be a good time to show. So here's his shirt, and you can see there's blue picking up on his shirt. There's also purple picking up on his shirt. So a lot of times this is without the color mixer, and this is with the blue and purple slightly desaturated, so it just kind of brings it back to a white. If it needs more intense, you can decrease it more. But you have to be careful of not decreasing the sky too much. All right, this is a drone shot. So this is like kind of a raw, kind of a JPEG. A lot of times with like drone photos, because I feel like they're not true raw photos, I just lower the intensity of the preset some. So I'm going to probably go with number, I think I'm going to do number 1 for this one. And this one actually doesn't look that bad, so I'm going to still keep it at 100% and then just tweak the white balance a little bit. So I'm making it slightly more pink, slightly more warm. Actually, I'm probably going to make it quite a bit warm just because I feel like Tuscany is very warm. And then I might change the colors of the yellows a little bit to be slightly more green. Actually, yeah, slightly more green, and then desaturate it a little bit. So there's before and after. All right, for this one, I'm gonna do a heavy crop. Actually, before I do that, I'm gonna get rid of this. That didn't work. All right. Sometimes the generative AI works so much better than the regular erase. Perfect. All right, so I'm putting the crop completely inside the door. And I'm gonna go through, I don't know which one I want to use for this, so we'll see. I'm thinking I probably will do 3. Ooh, 6 might be the right one for this. So I'm gonna up my exposure, decrease my highlights a little bit because I do still want to keep some of that background. I'm gonna up my shadows, decrease my contrast quite a bit actually, and then bring this in a little bit more. Then see if there's anything I want to change in the color mixer, but I feel like it looks fine. So there is the before and after for that photo. All right, so now we have some pretty contrasted indoor lighting. For this one, I'm definitely going to go with number 3. Typically, whenever I'm doing a photo that was taken by a window, like where direct window light is coming in, I'm either using 3 or 6. That's just always what I go to, if the photo's in color anyways. All right, I don't know what that is, but it's jumping out at me. All right, so that's probably all I would do for this photo. The greens in this room were a little bit intense, so I might desaturate them slightly, but I think that is it for this picture. Now this one was taken with flash, and this one could either be very intense and very more on the moody side, or it can be on the natural side. Before we do that, this table has to go. Close enough, because we're going to crop anyways. All right, so here's what we're starting off with, and I'm going to go in with something. If I wanted to keep it like super natural and clean, I'd probably do number 4, just decrease the exposure, and you have very, very close to life. And if I wanted to do something a little more intense, I'd probably go in with number 8, honestly, because it was flash. And then I'm going to decrease the opacity of this down to maybe like 85% and decrease my exposure, and then lower my temperature, change the tint slightly more pink. And then I'm also going to go into the color mixer and change the yellows to be a little bit more on the green side, and then desaturate them a little bit. So there is the before and after. All right, this one, there's so many options. I feel like some of these presets just like, they all look fine, and so you could choose any one of them. You just have to make a decision. So I'm gonna go with number 6 on this. Auto transform. Oops. Do a little spot removal there. That did not work. That's okay. Okay, so there you go. Very clean and simple. All right, now this lighting was definitely different from this one. They were mostly lit by by like outdoor clouds here, but she's kind of more on the inside here. I'm gonna go, I think, a little more intense for this one. I'm gonna do number 7 because I love the way that it just kind of fades these blacks. And then I'm actually gonna increase the intensity of this quite a bit, maybe 120%. Auto transform does not look good on this photo, so that's okay. We'll leave it as is. I'm going to mess with the shadows a little bit here, I think. I really like them, but I think they're a little intense, so I'm just decreasing the intensity of the shadow panel here back towards the center. And that's the before and after. All right, here we have an indoor one. Love this blue coming through the windows because it was raining outside. It's like my worst type of lighting situation. So let's go ahead and get rid of those little distractions. Okay. I knew number 3 was going to be it. So, like I said, it's typically what I go for those like indoor ambient lighting situations. The only thing I'm going to have to really change here is the blue, so I definitely want to desaturate those. And there's also aqua that's pinging, so I'm desaturating the aqua. And then I might increase the luminance of the orange a little bit. Keep the red the same. Then I might actually up the yellows too. And then I'll see if there's anything. I'm going to take the tint slightly more green, and then there's the before and after. All right, a fun party flash shot is definitely going number 8. We'll see if the guided works for this. Yeah, it's messing with their faces a little bit, so we're just going to use this one as a rotate, and I'll change it vertically a little bit. And then I'm going to crop in. And I'm gonna remove this thing. Some people would keep this, but I feel like because it's only on one side, I have to remove it. Otherwise, it's just gonna look like a weird line when I'm totally zoomed out. So there we go, a little bit cleaner. And there's a before and after, very quick. I didn't even edit any of the colors for this. I just was editing the uprightness of the image, but the colors was just one click for number 8. All right, moving on to some detail photos. I'm gonna crop in on this one, and for detail photos like this, I feel like I have a lot of wiggle room. When it comes to actual like table settings, I try and keep those most of the time on the natural ones because people spend so much time picking out their colors and their flowers and all these things. Like, I don't want to mess with that, so I try and keep those very natural. But I do know, I think I'm gonna love number 2 on this one even still. And then I'm going to up the intensity. This one I'm going pretty high. This is 140% intensity. And I'm decreasing the exposure. And wow, it looks beautiful. So there's the before and after for that. Same setting, totally different lighting situation. I will probably end up doing number 3 for this one. Crop this in slightly, change my temperature down. I'm going to up the vibrance as well a little bit. And going down into the color mixer, I'm going to continue to decrease those yellows. And up the exposure a little bit more, up the saturation a little bit. And there's very simple, beautiful before and after. Okay, back to our intense lighting. I think I'm going to go number 6 for this one. Definitely. I'm going to up the intensity quite a bit, 125%, decrease the exposure, and there's the before and after. Looks so good. Okay, this photo I love in black and white, but because of the just like the way that she's positioned, I do have to edit it a little bit. So I'm going to show the process of what I did for this photo for the actual gallery. So deleting those things, cropping in. All right, so for this picture, I did the Ilford HP5. I'm going to have to change the shadows on this. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to go back to this, increase the intensity slightly, go back to my auto transform, up the shadows, and I'm probably also going to increase the clarity on this one as well, just to really make sure that all the details are popping. So there's before and after. Okay, so beach photos, I always keep natural. I don't like altering the colors of blues. Like, I don't want to have like a warm yellow preset on top of a beach photo because I just think that you should preserve the color of the ocean, my personal preference. So I could do number 1, but number 2 is really my go-to for anything beach related. So applying that one, decreasing the exposure. I'm going to change the tint slightly more pink, up the temperature slightly more warm, auto transform, rotate this a little further, crop in, and before and after. For this photo, actually, I'm going to, because the water was like so apparent in this, I'm going to change the blue slightly more towards like the blue side instead of like a blue-green side. And then I'm going to increase the saturation of it, just so I can really maintain that ocean color. I think same thing for this photo. I could do number 2 and just keep it really subtle and beautiful. But for this one, I'm actually going to do something a little bit more intense. I'm going to go back and do maybe the Ilford HP5 again. I'm going to decrease my exposure to really just make it about them, and then I'm going to crop this in super heavy. And decreasing, and then I'm going to decrease the grain as well. And that's probably how I'd edit that photo. Maybe I'll up the shadows just a little bit too. All right, this photo, I am going to keep a little more on the softer, warmer side. So we're going to do number 6. Bring this in, and maybe up the shadows a little bit more. And that's the before and after. On to some flash photos. Hello. On to some flash photos. I'm gonna start with, I think I might do number 9 for this one because I just feel like I wanted to make it a little bit more intense when I was editing. So right off the bat though, I know I'm gonna wanna change the shadow color. So in color grading, you can kind of see it's a little bit too blue-green for me, so I'm going to make that like a yellow-green, and I might actually increase the intensity of that slightly. And I'll transform this one, crop it in. And that's the before and after. For this one, I'm going to do another black and white. I'm going to do the old film one. We're going to crop this in. I'm going to also decrease my highlights a little bit, while upping my exposure and then decreasing the grain to about number 3. And a little rotate, little recrop, and there you go, before and after. All right, here's one more flash one from the same night. Getting rid of those little things. And I'm gonna keep this one, I think, more natural. I'm gonna do number 2, increase the intensity, warm up the photo, decrease the exposure, take the tint slightly pink, and there's before and after. Actually, for the shadows on this one, I think I'm gonna make them a little bit more warm. Okay, there we go. All right, so here's an indoor photo, and let's see what we want to do with this one. I think just keeping this one very natural. I'm just going to do 1. I don't want any blues in the shadows for this. I just want it to be very neutral in application. So very quick and easy before and after. All right, I shot this one a little bit blue. I probably would have said this was the correct white balance. So let's go ahead and do, I think I'm going to do number 6 for this one. Number 6 naturally has things a little bit warmer. Oof, that was a bad auto transform. Okay, we're gonna go with guided for this one. Okay, and crop this in and get rid of this thing, and then make this just slightly warmer, decrease the exposure a little bit, and there's the before and after. Alright, same thing I think with this. It's the same scene, same time and everything. So I'm probably going to go in with number 6 on this photo as well. Yes, perfect. Up the warmth just to make it nice and cozy. I feel like for this photo, it was February and it was freezing outside, so I feel like having the photos cozy is actually really fitting. All right, so there's the before and after, just applying number 6 without any tweaks. Okay, on to some detail photos. There's definitely going to be some more of those in the latter half of this video. I'm going to apply something very natural to this one. Number 1 is typically what I do. Very quick and easy. Same thing here. I'm going to just decrease the temperature here and maybe up the shadows a little bit. And very simple and subtle. For this photo, whenever I just like see that the shadows are right, I know for black and white, I'm going in with Ilford, and it's just gonna like either Ilford or the faded one, but maybe faded with more intensity. Like, I just feel like it is the perfect atmosphere for it. However, I did mean to do a color edit on this one, so let me go back and do that. So I'm gonna do 7 on this. Change this slightly bluer, slightly more tinted green, and there you go, before and after. All right, well, I always have to remember to wait. So I didn't apply the auto transform to these, because like you've seen throughout the video, sometimes it absolutely sucks and just ruins, like it's just bad. So I typically auto transform all my photos, but I don't have it included in the preset in case Lightroom just does an absolutely terrible job with it. So you can manually do that if that's something that you want to do. I personally like doing that because I'm really particular about having straight photos. But yeah, anyways, moving on. I'm gonna do, I don't know if I want this one color or black and white. I think I might do black and white for this one. I'll do another Ilford, keep it at 100%, auto transform it, decrease the exposure, up the shadow some, crop it in, remove these things, lovely vents. All right, and there you go. Okay, some more fun flash ones from the night. So I'm probably, without testing any of the other ones, just gonna go in with number 8 because I just love the way it applies to flash. Decreasing my exposure. For this photo, I'm gonna up the tint slightly pinker, and there's the before and after. Same thing with this. I'm actually just gonna paste that on here. Decrease my exposure. I'm gonna up the shadow slightly for this one and decrease the highlights. Maybe make it a little bit warmer. Crop in. And there we go. All right. Now these photos here can really go one of two ways. I probably would put a more film edit on this one because it's just such an epic moment that I feel like it needs to be drastic. So I'm going to do number 9. And I'm just going to decrease the exposure, and looks beautiful. Same thing here. I could just paste it, although this one is a little bit too warm. We'll probably had more sparks in the moment. So I'm going to decrease the temperature, make the tint slightly pinker, and there you go. All right. So I feel like one thing people always mention is the greens in my photos. And like I mentioned, for me, that's usually just going number 1 or 2. Like, I seriously don't have to really go in and edit this at all. I just apply number 2 to this. There you go. You can just see the greens. Like, if you look at the color here, it's very subtle, but it's just very beautiful, and it's just keeping it natural. And that's all I do. Okay, for this photo, I'm gonna go in a little heavier, do number 7, decrease the exposure, up the warmth, and I'm actually gonna decrease the greens a little bit because I'm seeing like this leaf here is looking a little intense, so I'm just gonna desaturate the greens, make them a little bit warmer, and there's the final. All right, so this is a perfect example of what I like to use the editorial flash for. So if I just apply that one, you can see it's like smooth. It has a lot of clarity. It's just crisp, and it has just amazing highlights and shadows. So I, most of the time, will just change the exposure if it needs it, but that's really it. That's just a quick before and after, and I use that for flash a lot. So same thing if I use it here. I might have to increase the intensity of it a little bit, up the exposure, and then probably crop in. And there you go. Okay, getting into some nice rainy day photos. I love these ones. So this is a moment where I'm like definitely going to use the faded black and white just because it does something magical to the shadows. Very easy before and after. I'll do some color on these ones. So this gallery I edited pretty much all with 1 and 2. It just mattered whether or not I wanted to have really those like blue shadows in there. I think I'm going to keep number 2 for this one, and I probably actually am not going to tweak anything about the colors for this one. Just going to get rid of the little distractions, and there you go. I love like how when it ends up being a one click, I'm so happy. All right, so this photo is actually one I had on my website as an example photo for the old film. So I'll just show you how I applied that. Click it, straighten it, crop it, decrease exposure. And there you go. Very beautiful, very little detail photo, made to look very old. I love it. All right, for this photo, I could really go so many ways with this. I really could. I think I'm gonna do, oh, I have so many ways that I could edit this. I'm gonna do number 7. I'm gonna edit it a little bit warmer. I just really like the fade and the shadows on 7. And that would be my before and after. And then if I wanted to, I could even crop this in and do like a little detail shot of her legs and bouquet. Oh, that looks so good. I love this. Like number 7 is one of my favorites too. All right, this one I edited on Instagram with Ilford HP5. One click, there you go. Nothing to tweak here. I think the same thing for this one. I just wanted this to be very moody, so apply Ilford HP5, crop it in, and there you go. Beautiful. Okay, so here are some of those drone photos again, and these are taken as like what I call half raws, because they're kind of raws, but they're also kind of not raws. So first things first, I'm going to edit this one in black and white because it's what I had. I would probably just go in with, I definitely don't want to use the Ilford or the old film because I don't want the shadows of the tree to disappear. Probably just go in with maybe editorial, and I'll up the exposure here, and then I'll only do this on one photo because it's the same process, but basically there's a lot of team members down here on the field. So we're getting rid of all of those little things that are kind of in the way, applying generative AI. This one has taken a while. All right, this one added a little bit of a flower right there, so I'm just gonna alter the variation. And there you go, much cleaner. All right, so this green is not looking cute right off the bat. This is just what you get with a raw photo. It looks absolutely nothing like the photo that I have edited on my Instagram. I'm just gonna do a little manual removal here for some of these things. All right, so going through the presets, number 5 is kind of what comes to mind first. I don't really want the intensity. Well, actually, I might go in with number 1 instead, just because it will require a little bit less in the color mixer. So here, basically what I'm going to do, desaturate the yellow, maybe make it a little bit warmer in the overall photo, and also slightly pinker, and then maybe turn it back down on the warmth. I'm gonna up the highlights and the whites and the saturation, and then maybe desaturate the greens even more. And there you have it, before and after of this beautiful tree photo. All right, so 1 minute after this, or I guess before this photo, the sun was out and then it became cloudy, so it's going to be edited a little bit differently. I'm going to go in with number 5 for this one and probably bring down the luminance of the yellow a little bit, and then change the yellow to be slightly more green, desaturate it a little bit, warm the photo up, crop it in, and then also I would generative AI in Photoshop, like removing the second photographer from the background here, but that is the before and after. All right, I'm gonna do this one I'll do this one actually a little bit more heavy edited, but I'll edit it after I do this one. So this is a photo that is just 1 click for number 1. Decrease exposure a little bit, probably decrease the yellow saturation. Oops, I will remove these things in the background. Probably remove this little moss. Anything that I really feel like, even if it's okay, like it's natural, if I feel like it brings the eye away from where the eye should be going, then I'm gonna remove it regardless. Any day now. There we go. All right, this looks bad back here. Going through the variations, we'll go with number 3. All right, so we have our before and after. So like I said, this is why I use number 1 and 2 a lot, is just because I feel like the greens are so beautiful and it's so subtle and it really just makes the photo pop without really changing stuff. So this is why they're my favorite. For this one, I'm gonna go a little heavier. Probably go with number 9. This is like, I don't love to edit cinematically very much because I feel like it's just not my style. I like to keep things a little, like I like to pose and direct cinematically, but I like to edit a little more natural. So I'm gonna apply 9, but then decrease the opacity some. And then also go into color grading, and I can see that it's actually, I like it, but I'm just gonna decrease the shadows a very, very tiny bit. Okay, so there's the before and after. That one's like a little bit moodier. This one is very natural. For this photo, I'm just gonna do classic black and white. Nothing special, crop it in. There you go. I might add grain to this one as well, but that's it. All right, so here we have another example of window lighting. I'm gonna go to number 6 for my go-to. I'm gonna up the intensity of this a little bit, decrease the exposure. There you go. Nothing else really to do for this photo. All right, for this picture here, I am definitely going to want to keep this natural. I'm going in with number 2, decreasing exposure, decreasing temperature slightly, auto transforming, and there you go. Very simple before and after. Right now, this, I feel like the moment is a little more intense, so I can go in with something a little bit more intense of an edit. I'm gonna do number 7, just decrease the exposure. I'm gonna change the shadow color a little bit. I think I want it to be kind of more of like, less of a green blue and more of a purple blue or a blue blue. So there's the before and after. All right, again, this is crazy green intense, so I'm going in with number 2. This one is going to need the tint shifted towards the pink side, and honestly, that's it. I love how simple and easy this is. It makes my life so easy. All right, so this is a direct sunlight photo. I'm going in with number 3 just to keep things very natural and kind of on the lower contrast side. All right, we have another heavy green photo. This one has some pretty intense lighting. I'm gonna go in with number 1 instead of number 2 because I don't really want those blue shadows. And then I'm gonna increase my exposure, decrease my highlights a little bit, change the tint slightly towards the pink side, and there we go, before and after. All right, for this photo, I definitely want to keep things on the very like soft, low contrast side. This lighting is so intense, so all these presets look a little bit intense going on, but we're gonna tweak it. I think I'm gonna go in with number 3. I'm gonna up my exposure. I'm going to actually up the highlights a little bit. I'm gonna decrease the clarity to kind of make it glow. Up the warmth, up the tint, maybe take the warmth back down actually. And then I can also mess with the luminance if I wanted to. Like I could lift the yellows, lift the greens, lift the oranges, but I think overall I'm just gonna keep it as it is. So there would be the before and after. Love this photo. Number 6. Auto transform, crop in, whoops, before and after, done. Nothing else to change here. I love how simple and easy that is. I pray that all of you have the same experience. I think really it's just a matter of white balance. Like, this photo was taken at a correct white balance. It wasn't too cool like this. It wasn't too warm like that. It was just at the right white balance. So it makes it really easy to apply the presets. And like I said, windows, I love number 6. All right, I'm keeping this one much more on the natural side. Number 2, it's a go-to. Very quick and easy. I like how it kind of takes the blue out of the scene and just makes everything a little more white. Now for this photo, I think I'm going to do black and white. I'm going to do editorial because I want things to be on the crisper side. Increase my exposure, auto transform, crop, and done. Okay, this photo, I'm only going to do one of these. I think I'm going to do this picture. This one I had with the Ilford HP5 preset. Can you just like see the shadows and the grain and the beautiful texture on that? I absolutely love it. I have nothing to change here. It's beautiful. Okay, so on to another green heavy photo. This one I feel like was taken where the white balance could have been more like that. This one's definitely tinted to the green side. That's okay. I'm going to go in with natural 2 because I want to keep the blues in their dresses more prominent. Upping the tint to pink, upping the temperature, warmer, decreasing the exposure. I'm going down to the greens, and I'm actually going to take the yellows and leave them as they are. The greens are going to go very slightly warmer, and then I'm going to desaturate them as well. So there you have the before and after. And I'm going to paste that one on here and see what we get. So I'm going to up the exposure, make it warmer, crop this in further, maybe make it slightly pinker, and there you go. All right, for this photo, again, portrait time is when I tend to go a little bit more intense with edits, so I'm going to try number 9 and then just up the temperature and the tint to the pink side. So it just looks like magical fairy garden. I'm sorry if I'm like zooming through these, but hopefully it also lets you see how quickly these photos can be edited. All right, so this is a very sunny photo, and I think I'm going to go in with number 8 because it's kind of an intense preset, but I'm going to bring it towards the pink side and just crop it in a little bit. Maybe even up the clarity slightly, and then that would be the before and after. All right, so for this photo, I think I'm gonna go with number 6 because I really like what it does to her dress here in the highlights. It just adds like a very slight yellow color. I am gonna have to edit these greens though because they are crazy. They're so intense. So the green saturation is going down and the green hue is also going warmer. And then there's the before and after. All right, we have some more drone photos. I think I'm going to keep this one on the natural side. I'm going to actually lift the intensity to about 125, decrease exposure, up the warmth, up the pink tint, and there you have it. I'm going to paste that one right on here too. All right, so more detail shots. I'm going to crop this in a little bit and maybe go a little bit heavy on this one with number 9. Increase the exposure, decrease the highlights some so that we can see more of the light streaks here. Decrease my temperature and get rid of a couple little smudges up here. All right, Beautiful. Now this one is a little bit more of a natural lighting, so I'm going to go in probably with natural 1 for this one. I'm going to make it a little bit more intense though, and then just decrease the light, or decrease the exposure and the temperature slightly, and very simple. All right, here we have a getting ready photo with indoor lighting that isn't the best, but it's also not the worst. So I would probably just use natural 2 for this one, lift the shadow slightly and decrease the temperature a little bit. And then also just make sure that in my color mixer that the shirts are looking okay. So if I up and down the blue and purple exposure, I'm getting a little bit of purple, but not much. And the only thing I'm kind of noticing in here is, like, if you really zoom in, you can see there's some chromatic aberration going on. So I'll probably just go to lens corrections and take in the manual side, defringe amount, and I'm going to bring that up to like 10. I feel like 10, well, maybe a little bit less than that. 5 to 10 is like my safe spot, and it kind of gets rid of those very slight like purple outlines on highlights. All right, here we have a photo that I'm going to do in black and white, and I'm going to keep this one much more crisp and smooth, so I'm going in with editorial. Could even go in and crop this photo like so. And then for this picture, I'm going to do in color. I'd probably go with number 2, but maybe I'll go with number 7 actually. Decrease the temperature, up the exposure. This actually looks a lot like the film photo that I took of this exact moment, so that's why I love the film presets, because they match my film in the galleries really well. All right, now this lighting sucked. The room did not have great windows. I put this one in a black and white, but I couldn't just do normal. I think I'm gonna do classic, but it has to have the exposure lifted as well as the shadows pretty intensely lifted. And I'm just gonna brighten this one actually quite a bit. Oops. Get rid of this door thing, and there you go for black and white. All right, more intense greens. So this one we're gonna be keeping natural. I'm gonna be going number 2, and then I'm gonna have to edit the greens for this quite a bit. So first I'm gonna up the temperature slightly, and then we're gonna go down to the greens and see. I've already done quite a bit on the greens in the color mixer, but I'm gonna just do a little more intense, desaturating them and then making them on the warmer side. So there you have before and after. And I could even paste that onto here if I wanted to, and then just adjust for the scene difference. So making this one a little bit warmer, decreasing exposure, cropping a little bit. There you have before and after. And then really same thing, if it's all shot in the same environment, normally I'm just copy and pasting and tweaking slightly. So I'll just up the exposure of this. I'll change the tint slightly pinker, crop a little bit more, and there you have before and after. All right, onto a warm and sunny situation. So I'm gonna do number 2 on this one because I really don't want to mess with the colors on this too much. Decreasing our temperature. The sky's looking a little purple to me, and you can kind of see it's registering just as blue, so I'm gonna drag the blue to the more like green teal side, and then that's before and after. Ceremony, keeping it natural. Again, we're going in with number 2, upping the exposure, making it warmer, before and after. All right, here we have some very direct sunlight. So with this one, I might play around a little bit and do, I think I'm gonna do number 6, but I am gonna have to mess with the sky. For some reason, the way that the camera captured the sky this day was just weird. So I'm gonna decrease the blue saturation and up the blue luminance. Maybe just a little bit. All right, so there we have before and after. All right, this photo was a little interesting to edit because I feel like I had so many colors I'm not used to, like orange trees and blue water and green trees. Again, I'm going to keep this one natural. I'm not doing blue shadows on this one. I'm just doing very natural, decrease the exposure, and then I'll edit some things out, like second shooters back here, some things on the pool line, but very quick and easy before and after here. All right, this was also in the ceremony. We're gonna say goodbye to these guys first because they're very distracting. Goodbye. This one actually is gonna have to be a generative AI. I would just cover the legs, cover the top, and we'll apply that really quick. All right, and that looks pretty good. All right, so now for the base of the photo, we're going in with number 2, cooling that down, cropping in, and before and after. Actually, I'm gonna make it a little bit cooler, decrease the exposure again, and there you go. There's the before and after. Same thing with this. With typical portraits where they're just kind of standing and looking at the camera, I'm gonna do very natural, either do 1 or 2. I think I'm gonna do without the blue shadows for this one. And then just gonna auto align and crop. And that's all I would do for this photo. Portraits like these with intense lighting, I'm gonna edit more intense. So I'm gonna go down to the film ones and see which one I like best. I'm probably gonna go with number 9, decrease the exposure, decrease the temperature slightly, and beautiful before and after. I'm just gonna paste that one on here and then just dramatically bring down the exposure and then change the shadow color to be a little bit more of like a yellow orange. Beautiful. I got that done in like what, 15 seconds? It's amazing. Okay, we're gonna go in one more time with, I think I'm gonna do natural 1 for this one. Definitely warming it up, decreasing exposure, upping the tint slightly pinker, and cropping. Perfect. Okay, so this indoor photo has a lot going on, very orange skin tones, blue leaves in the background just based on the way the camera captured it. So I'm gonna go in with one that I know is gonna be a consistent color, so I'm just gonna start with 1, but I'm gonna have to change a lot on this one. So first things first, I'm desaturating the entire picture. I'm gonna go down and mess with the skin tones, making them slightly more yellow, decreasing the orange saturation a little bit, and then I'll see if there's anything I can change with the aqua. So I can definitely change it a little bit. I'm kind of sliding it more green, and then with blues I can make the leaves a little bit more green as well, and then I'll probably just desaturate both of those. And there you have before and after. Saved that photo. Okay, this one is very flat and simple, so I'm gonna keep it simple. I'm gonna apply number 2. I love the blue shadows in the trees, but I'm gonna make this a lot warmer and a lot pinker in the tints. And I'm probably gonna up the saturation of this as well. And then maybe just change the yellow tint slightly warmer, and there we go. Okay, so my film photo for this came out so blue. I'm not going to edit the digital photo the same way. I'm going to keep it a little bit more natural. So I'm just going to do number 2, crop her in, and there you go. I might actually change the greens for this a little bit warmer, but that's it. That would be it for that photo. All right, on to the reception. I'm going to go back to natural 2, decrease the exposure, up the warmth quite a bit, decrease the exposure again, And wow, that changed a lot. So that photo was really cool to begin with, and now it just looks very, very well balanced. Okay, here we have like a set of some flash photos and some black and whites. So when I'm shooting something that was like in a flash environment like this, but I shot it without flash, I typically will go in with Ilford, and we're gonna up the exposure quite a bit, and you can kind of just see it creates like this beautiful film texture to it. All right, moving on to a flash one. I'm gonna go in with number 8 because that's what I normally use for flash, but I am gonna have to tweak it because this room was providing some crazy colors. So I am going in and decreasing the exposure first, decreasing the temperature. Gonna up the tint slightly pinker, decrease the highlights a little bit to preserve the detail in the dress. And that's the before and after. And then I could paste that one here, but I'm gonna show the difference between the Ilford HP5 on flash versus the non-flash. So here you have it. It's just like a little bit more stark. And then if you go over here, it's like a very similar look, but they're also slightly different. So on this one, I'm gonna do 8 again for flash, decreasing temperature, increasing tint towards pink. And there you have before and after. And I can definitely just paste that one here and then decrease the exposure. And for her hair, I'm gonna slide the yellow and make sure that it's not too green. So I'm gonna take it a little bit towards the orange side. And then there's the before and after. And I'm just gonna crop this in. Beautiful. All right, this is a drone photo, so the presets might be a little bit intense. I think I'm gonna go in with number 2, warm it up, and then change the color of the sky because it's registering a little too purple for me, so I'm gonna move it just slightly towards the green-blue side, and there you go. And then if I just paste that from the last photo, I'm gonna increase the contrast, increase the temperature, and there you go. With stuff like this, you could tell without the color mixer, the dance floor is registering as blue, so I'm going to decrease the blue a little bit extra, just make sure it's very white. All right, changing scenes quite a bit. We're going to Greece, so there's going to be a lot of whites in these photos that we're dealing with, a lot of whites and blues. I'm going to keep this photo pretty natural just because I feel like I'm using a natural element and I want to keep things very minimal and let the nature speak for itself. So I'm doing number 1, increasing the intensity of it. I did about 140%. I'm decreasing exposure, and there's the before and after. All right, so a getting ready photo. I click number 2, and I'm gonna leave it just as is. That's all I did for this picture. All right, so this is straight out of camera. To me, the sky looks very purple, so I'm definitely gonna be editing that. I'm probably just gonna use number 2 for this, but actually, you know what? I'm gonna use number 3. I like the way that it looks better. And then I'm going down to the blues and taking it slightly more towards the green-blue side. And there you have the before and after. And then, I don't know what these things were, but they're all going away. Okay, perfect. And now if I copy all of these, typically when I'm going through Lightroom, I'm going to remove crop, remove masking, lens blur, transform, and lens correction. So this is my standard copy settings for when I'm going to move settings from one photo to another. So if I paste the same thing onto here, it's copying all the right things and leaving out the stuff that should be left out. And then for this one, I'm just going to increase the blue saturation a little bit. And before and after. All right, so if I paste those same settings, it's looking great. I'm just going to go back and paste number 2 with higher intensity for this one. Make it a little bit cooler. And then I'm gonna be increasing the blue saturation in these photos. I'm gonna make it slightly cooler. Okay, there we go, perfect. And then this photo I actually shot in daylight with flash, so I'm gonna use editorial for this one because it's just giving me that crisp outdoor flash look, which is exactly what I wanted. Crop that in and we're done. All right, for this photo, I'm gonna start with a little bit of AI here, getting rid of this tree thing because it doesn't look very appealing in this photo. Also getting rid of the cars. None of those look amazing, but I am going to crop this in anyway, so I'm just going to leave it like that, and then I'm going to get rid of that piece and crop it to about right there. Alright, so now we have our new raw photo, and I'm going to go in back with number 2 for this, increasing the intensity, decreasing exposure, decreasing temperature, increasing saturation, increasing blue saturation, and there we have before and after. On to some ceremony photos. So honestly, for like the entire blue sky section of this wedding, I just used number 2. Like I said over and over again, this is just my go-to preset. So I'm going down on exposure. Unfortunately, we were kind of in the sky, so I don't have anything in the highlights to work with, so I'm really just working with what's in the foreground. But you can see like what happens to the softness of her skin and the color of her skin and the greens. It's just really beautiful and subtle. And I can just paste that photo onto here, although now we actually have some detail to work with. So I'm going to drag the temperature down a little bit and the saturation up. And I'm going to go in and increase my, well, see, one thing I didn't like about this is like when I increased my blue saturation, it also increased the guest clothing. So for this photo specifically, what I was doing is going in with a mask, and I'm not going to leave it this intense. I just have it kind of so I can see what I'm selecting a little bit more. And I'm increasing the blue of really just the ocean. That way it's not going to affect the color of the guest clothing. And I'm just going to do it very, very subtly. So something like that would be now the before and after. And this is basically the same photo as before, just farther away. So I'm just copying and pasting. And there you go. Alright, so this photo I'm going to do in HP5, decrease my exposure, and then get rid of some of the random little things here. Unfortunately, we had a crazy windy day, so the little setups that they ended up having did not work out to be exactly as they were planned to be, so I am going to be removing those just to clean up the photo so that it looks like really put together and clean. Oops. All right, so there we have it. Okay, so now we're on to some sunset photos. So these are different because this is taken with flash, this is taken without flash. You can see there's a big lighting difference. I mean, there's like a minute apart from each other. So for flash, again, I'm going to go a little more intense. I'm probably going to go with number 8. For this photo, though, I am going to decrease the... Actually, I don't want to do number 8 for that one. I'm going to do something different. Let me go back to here for now, though. So I think I'm going to do number 2 for this photo, increase the brightness quite a bit, decrease the tint towards the green. Seriously, the tint is like one of my best friends. Like I truly use it on like every photo. So then I just desaturate it, and now you can immediately see the difference between that. If I had just applied number 2 and increased the exposure, that's the difference that I get between messing with the tint and the saturation, which makes a huge difference. So then I can go and apply it on here, but it might be cutting off a little bit too much, so I think I'm going to increase the saturation and take the tint back towards the pink side to really just show off that sunset. And we're going to rotate and crop. And then we'll see if there's anything else in the color mixer. Not really. I think I'm going to increase the yellows a little bit. And there's the before and after. All right, so back to this photo. We'll see which one I want. I think I'm going to go number 2 because I'm just loving the difference between 1 and 2, those blue shadows in the bushes here. Getting rid of strange random stuff. I also am a little bit probably too picky, and I'm going to get rid of these little sidewalk lines as well. All right, and there we have it, before and after. Very simple. I love shooting with flash during the, especially like sunset, but during the daytime really at any point. Okay, so we're gonna move on to, this was not shot with flash. This was shot with a strobe light that I have on my flash. So this is kind of an interesting lighting that I don't get to work with that often. But I am going to still go in with number 2 on this one. Actually, I like number 3 a little bit better. So we're going to do number 3. We're going to have to desaturate this though a little bit. And then change the color of the oranges in the hues. Maybe increase saturation just a tiny bit. And then there would be before and after. And then I'm going to add a little bit of green to this as well. I love how this one just kind of looks naturally vintage, even though it was just like the intense lighting. All right, we are getting down to the line. So moving on to a totally different environment. Now we are in Napa, so things are a lot more white, a lot more yellow-green here instead of that cool green color. So for this photo, I think I'm going to stick to probably something, I might do 4. I'm just going to keep this one so clean and natural. So I'm decreasing my exposure. This one, I know her dress is going to be registering as some colors. It just looks like it. So yeah, there's a lot of blue on the wall and in his jacket and stuff. So I'm not going to decrease it all the way, but I am going to decrease it quite a bit. And then I'm also going to take the orange hue and move it slightly yellow, and then take the yellow, because like I said, blondes typically can have their hair be a little bit green. So I'm going to move that slightly to the orange side on the yellow slider. And then we're going to auto transform this. And I actually ended up taking all these photos into Photoshop and extending the wall to be like all the way up. So I got rid of the sky and the tree. I'm not going to do that because it's Photoshop related, but I also got rid of all these little sidewalk lines as well. All right, and then lastly, I'm just going to change the tint to be a little bit more green and the temperature slightly more warm. And then that is how I would edit that, minus the photoshopping. So now we're moving on to some detail photos. So like I mentioned a few times, I try and keep the details as close to life as possible. So I'm always using the natural ones. I'm going to apply number 2, and like right off the bat, you can see just how that changes the greens into more of like an acceptable, eye-pleasing color. So I'm going to auto rotate this a little bit, crop in slightly, and then I'm going to decrease the highlights just a little bit so that I can retain some more detail in the umbrellas. And that would be my before and after. And then I'll go into Photoshop and remove this stuff in the background. So I can just paste that preset onto here and just increase the exposure some. And then I have that before and after. This is a different setting, but it's going to use the same preset. It's going to use color too. I'm going to increase the contrast a little bit and slightly decrease the exposure, straighten it out. And like on photos like this, you can barely even see the intensity. I feel like if we go back to a photo, let's see, where was it? A photo like this with the natural 1 and 2, like you can see the difference in the greens, and then sometimes they're just like so subtle you can barely see it, but I feel like it's enough to be like, yes, this is an edited photo, this is the final version. All right, so this photo was shot a little bit cool. Honestly, the lighting here was just a little bit difficult. I would say this is probably regular white balance, and this is on the cooler side, but I'm gonna go in with number 6, I think, and then we're just gonna up the temperature to make things back where they should be. And then I'm just gonna check in here on the color grading and make sure that everything looks okay in the color mixer, and it all looks good. So very simple before and after. And then I can just paste that one onto here as well, except for this photo I want a lot less contrast, and I also need a little bit desaturation of blue. You can tell a lot in his shirt, so I'm desaturating that quite a bit. And then I'm going to up the white, or the orange luminance. And then there's the before and after. All right, more detail photos, sticking with natural. I'm going to do number 4 and increase the intensity because it's just like a very bright, sharp photo. Upping the temperature, decreasing the tint slightly, and then you have before and after. This photo, I feel like the sky is looking a little bit on the purple side as well. I'm going to go in with number 6 for this one and make it kind of a little bit more film inspired. And then I'm just going to make sure that I like the blue. So I'm going to desaturate them just a tiny bit and then make them slightly more on the blue-green side. And there you have that before and after. And then in either Photoshop or generative AI, I'm getting rid of the videographer and the lines on the ground. All right, we have more detail photos. Again, these are just going to be number 2, so I'm going to kind of skip through those ones. This one, I could also do number 2, and just one click, I'm like, I really don't have anything to change about this. I might increase the intensity a little bit, decrease the exposure, but honestly, it makes editing go by so quickly. All right, now we have some more flash photos. I'm gonna do editorial black and white on this one, and you can see like right away how that makes her look. It's smooth, the highlights are crisp, the shadows are really dark. That's why I love using this one for flash. And then I'm gonna do a color one on this one just because I love all the oranges in the photo. This is a shutter drag image. So I'm gonna do something a little bit more intense. I think I'm gonna go with number 8 on this one. Decrease the temperature and the exposure a little bit. Very easy before and after, just really makes the image pop. Alrighty, so here we have a dress photo in kind of a darker lit room. I'm gonna go, I think, a little bit faded on this one. I might do number 7. And then just decrease the temperature and the exposure. And I think I might lift it a tiny bit, so I'm going to go back into the tone curve and just decrease the bottom left corner a slight bit. And then, of course, if you've learned anything about me in this video, it's that we're always going to delete or remove random things on the wall. So there we have before and after. I'm going to go a little more intense on this one just because it's a fun creative shot as it is. I'm going to do number 9, and we're going to increase the temperature quite a bit, decrease the exposure, and then I'm going to change, because I don't really want the shadow to be blue in here for this one, I'm going to change it to more of like a yellow color. And then we have before and after. And pasting that on here as well. But I'm actually going to increase the fade on this one slightly. So I'm just going to move that control point up out of the way a little bit and then increase the fade here. I'm going to decrease my contrast, decrease my exposure, decrease the temperature and the tint. And then now we have before and after. You can really see the colors of the preset in this one. All right, this was a fun little motion blur shot. I'm gonna delete all these little markings on the wall first. Get rid of that thing. Okay, and then I'm gonna go in with black and white for this one. I really could get away with any one of them. I think I might do the faded one though, and just increase the intensity. And then I could either keep this one like the full image, or I could even crop it down to be like her shoes and hands running. I feel like that's so pretty. Amazing. So simple. And more detail photos, although I feel like I went a little heavier when I edited this one. I would also generative AI these chairs out of the way. But I went with number 7, I believe, with a little bit higher intensity and a lot more warmth. And decrease the exposure, upped the contrast, cropped in some. And then I'm going to slightly change the shadows again, more warm. And then there we have before and after. This is honestly like how fast editing goes for me when I use these presets. Like I just zoom through a wedding. It's amazing. It's so nice to like edit weddings quickly. All right, another drone photo. This one I'm probably going to go in with number 5. Leave everything as is, except I am going to increase the saturation of the yellow back up a little bit, and then change, I think, the colors maybe a little bit more like fall inspired for this one. So there's me down there. I'll crop me out. And very quick and easy, kind of subdues those greens. All right, this photo I definitely made a little bit more on the creative edit. I desaturated this one quite a bit. So I'm gonna go in, I think with number 7, honestly. This is also a drone photo, so this is why the presets don't look amazing on them, is because it's not a digital camera. So I'm gonna start with 7. It's gonna need a lot of work. I'm gonna warm it up, decrease exposure, and then we're really gonna desaturate the yellows and the greens. And I'm also gonna make the greens warmer. That way it's just more of like a faded photo. And then I'm also, I think, gonna go into color grading and maybe make the shadows slightly warmer and make the midtones slightly more like peachy colored and more intense. So there we have, oh yeah, that looks really good. Before and after for that photo, using number 7 and just tweaking it because it's not really a full raw photo. Okay, so this was a very natural shot. I really didn't edit this one far away from its original colors. I just cropped it in and then applied really any one of these. I might do number 5 on this one. I mean, honestly, they all kind of look the same. Maybe I'll go with number 4. Just make it a little bit more intense. Decrease the exposure, add some grain to it, and there we go. This photo I had a lot of fun with just because I was like, let me just show how amazing this dress was in an image. So I went in with one of the film ones for this one. I think I'm going to do, I might do number 9, but then we're going to have to warm it up quite a bit. Yeah, something about right there. So it's definitely on the lower exposure side, but that's intentional. And then I'm going to warm up the shadows some. And then you can really see kind of the presets effect here. Okay, So now going on to these images, I'm going to edit this in color. And I am going to have to tweak this one actually because just the greens were a little strange in this forest. So I'm going to start with 3 because I like the overall color it's giving. But I'm going to edit the yellows to be slightly, actually we're going to leave the yellows as is. We're going to edit the greens to be cooler because the yellow is going to ping off of her hair and I don't want her hair to be green. So I'm going to desaturate the yellows instead. So there would be the before and after of number 3, I believe, on this one. Here we have a detail shot. So normally I would just do 1 or 2. If I wanted something like this to be a little bit more intense, I could go with one of the other presets. Here's number 6 on here. Very subtle, but just adds a really beautiful touch. And then we have a photo where the mountains are very blue-purple. So this one was kind of a pain in the butt to edit. I'm going to go in with number 2 for this one just to keep things as natural as possible. If I'm dealing with hard colors, I don't really want to add more stress to it. So I'm going to up the temperature, decrease the exposure, and then I'm probably going to change the color of the grass as well. I'm going to make it a little bit more green and then desaturate it. And then I'm going to actually up the contrast more, up the temperature more, decrease exposure a little bit more. And then I'm going to keep in, I think, a little bit of the blues of the mountain. There we have it. All right, now all of the stuff in the ground here just cracks me up because this is the reality of drone shots always. We got speakers, we got just all kinds of stuff. So we're going to get all of that out of there first, and then I'm going to apply number 5 for this one because I already know I just don't like the greens from this drone shot, and it's going to be the quickest way to kind of get the greens back to where I want them to be. Perfect. So going in with number 5, and you can see like they're kind of grayed out over here because it's a JPEG. For some reason, I took this photo in JPEG and not in RAW, so that's fun. So I'm going to apply number 5, and I'm going to increase the contrast, increase the saturation as well. Get rid of some of these weird shadowy patches in the grass. Very subtle, but I like what the greens are doing now. All right, moving on. So when I actually was tweaking preset number 3, I was tweaking it based on some film photos that I had from this exact room. And so I'm gonna use number 3 on this one because I wanted the photo, or I wanted the presets to actually match with what my film was looking like in the gallery. So I'm going to apply number 3 to this one. Just remove some little distractions. And that's about it. All right, here's an outdoor photo of the same getting ready spot. Not really a ton to edit out on this picture, but still the little stuff counts. I'm just going to crop that one out for now because you get the gist. I edit out a lot of stuff. Luckily with stone, I feel like the edits don't have to be perfect because stone is just what stone is. It's kind of messy like that. Anyways, I'm going to go in probably with number 1 for this one. I just want to keep it clean. I want to keep the color of the stone nice and natural and consistent to what it looks like in person. So I'm just going to crop and center this, decrease my exposure, and there you have it. Now this was just a little detail shot that we did inside, And I'm probably going to go in with 6 for this one. It's like a good happy medium between like a natural edit and something a little bit more intense, but also gives a lot of warmth to the image. And the only other thing that I really didn't like here was how the veil was so blue and purple. So you can see if I decrease the purple, I can get the veil a little bit whiter, but really it's a lot of blue. So I'm just decreasing the blue here. I'm going to leave the purple as is. So there we have it. And this was another detail shot just with kind of more intense sunlight. So I'm going to edit this one more intense. Like I said, sometimes with harsher lighting, I like to do not like a harsher edit, but something like a little bit more intense. So I'm going to go in with number 9, decrease that exposure, up the pink tint, and there you have it. I just love it, especially in intense light. Number 9, I love so much. Little getting ready moment. We're going to do natural number 2 on this one. And I think I'm going to decrease the exposure a little bit. And honestly, that's probably all I would do. I might actually make it a little bit cooler. It's very natural. You'd be surprised at just how little I edit, but I feel like that's all the photo needs. All right, this photo, I feel like the lighting is telling me to do something different than the natural one, so I think I'm going to go in with number 6, maybe number 7. I'm going to do number 7 at 90% opacity. Decrease the temperature, decrease the tint, get rid of this in the back, and there's the before and after. So you can see like what it's doing in the shadows. It's lifting them, it's creating just this beautiful creaminess over the full image. All right, now I'm gonna keep these ones on the natural side again, but I think what I'm gonna do for these ones, I'm gonna do, there's so many options really. I think I'm gonna go with number 4. It's very natural. I feel like the photo, the environment, it doesn't need a heavy edit. So number 4, so simple, but you can see it just adds like the right amount of green to the greens. So I'll just copy and paste that here. Actually, I might make it a little bit more intense. And then I'm gonna make her skin slightly more to the yellow side and the green slightly more to the blue side. And then there we have it. And I can even crop this in further. And you can see before and after. All right, now with this photo, I also was trying to match it to my film. So I'm probably gonna go in with number 8 for this one, even though this is flash. This is not flash, and I normally use the 8 for flash. I still love it for this moment. I'm just gonna decrease the highlights and up the exposure, and then maybe make it a little bit cooler. This just looked so similar to the film that I had taken in this moment that I decided to edit it this way. Now for something like this, I'm seeing a lot of like peaches in the yellows and the greens kind of warm, so I'm probably going to go a little more natural because I don't want to mess with like really intense bad colors. So I'm doing number 2 on this one, and I'm just going to increase the contrast a little bit, straighten that out, crop it in, and there you have before and after. You can see it kind of got rid of the blueness in her dress as well. Now for this one, this is definitely like a storybook moment, I feel like, so I am going to go in with a heavier edit for this one. I think I'm going to do, I'm conflicted. If I do 6, I'll probably up the highlights and make it a little bit cooler. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to leave it at that one. All right, now we have this indoor photo. This I'm going to leave pretty natural. Do a subtle little edit. Probably do number 2. I like that little blue pop to it. I'll increase my exposure, decrease my temperature, And there you have it. Very simple, very quick. All right, with these photos, I did something a little bit more intense. I was kind of using the window light. Also, this is a great example of that chromatic aberration. You can see all the purple lines here and what happens if you get rid of that. So I'm gonna do number 6 here because, like I said, I love 6 at windows. I'm gonna decrease the exposure, decrease the temperature. This one, I don't believe, yeah, it didn't do auto transform very well on this one. I am gonna lift it a little bit vertically and crop this in. Okay, and there's before and after. Look how beautiful that looks, and it's so simple, and it took no time. I'm going to keep this one very natural because I just love the simplicity of the moment. I'm going to do number 4 and just increase the intensity a little bit. Auto transform, crop, done. So simple. I love simplicity. All right, this is definitely a heavier moment. I'm going to go number 9 here, decrease my exposure, and I'm going to mess around with the color mixer a little bit. I think I want the oranges more yellow, the yellows more green, and that's pretty much it. I think I might decrease the temperature a little bit. And that would be the before and after. All right, here we have another green photo. This greens are pretty intense. The lighting was not ideal for this. So we're just gonna go with something natural and simple. I'm not gonna do number 5. I mean, I could, but I think, actually, you know what? I might bite my tongue. I'm gonna decrease the temperature and up the saturation. I guess we are going number 5 for this one. Okay, so now we've got some indoor photos here. I'm gonna do probably number 7 for this because I love, again, the fade and the shadows just fits with this like castle building so amazingly. So I'll just do that, and I'm probably not gonna mess with the white balance too much here. I feel like it looks okay. Just getting rid of these dots on the wall. And the preset already took out quite a bit of the blue that was in the tablecloths, which is what I wanted. So now I can copy and paste that onto other images from the same scene and get that beautiful fade. I can do it here as well. Just decrease the temperature some. Beautiful. I'll do number 8 for this for a little flash moment. Increase the intensity. The temperature for this needs to be pinker, or sorry, the tint. And we're gonna rotate this some, crop it in. Then I'm gonna add grain to this one. And decrease the tint a little bit more green actually. And there's before and after. Right, decrease the highlights a little bit. All right, last couple images. I love the colors in this room. I don't want to mess with them, so I'm going neutral too. Upping the shadows a little bit. And I might actually make it a little bit warmer because I feel like I shot it warmer. There you go. So before, after. All right, the lighting in this one, definitely a little bit more intense. I shot this darker on purpose. And I don't know what these are, getting rid of them. All right, I'm gonna start with number 6 because it's again a window and I love it at windows. I'm just increasing the intensity. Auto transform. I'm gonna make this more pink because the room had a lot of pinks in it. And look at that, beautiful before and after. If I wanted to make this a little bit more intense, I could actually decrease exposure and then go in and I'm gonna dehaze these little window light things and just make the stuff streaming in a little more intense. There we go. Perfect. All right, our last image. Wow, we have made it through 200 pictures. All right, I'm gonna do this one a little bit more cinematic because I just feel like the moment is there. So I'm gonna do number 9, make it warmer. I'm gonna tweak the oranges in their skin a little bit, desaturate them. I'm gonna increase the saturation of the yellow for the grass in the background. And there is the before and after. All right, guys, hopefully that was so helpful. That was a lot of images to go through, but you got to see how I edit my photos. This is honestly the same like quickness that I edit all of my galleries with. I just feel like there's such a good balance of natural edits, but I can also play around with more intense edits if I want the moment to just really pop. So that's how I edit my photos, and hopefully you will have the same experience with these presets. All right, time to switch gears and edit some of your presets that you guys have submitted to me. So I'm gonna run through same exact process, just show you which presets I'm applying and then tweaking them. This will look a little bit different because people obviously shoot on different gear. I have Canon, Nikon, Sony. People also shoot on different white balances, depending if it's Kelvin or if it's auto white balance, etc. So there will be a little bit more tweaking with this stuff, obviously, than what I shoot because I shoot very consistently and kind of made the presets for my own images. But hopefully this part will show you that it's, you know, still applicable regardless of what your raw photos look like. You can still apply the presets the same way. So we're going to start off. I have all these lovely photos to go through. So for this first photo, like I mentioned in the earlier part of the video, I like to do detail photos natural because you have so many details that were very carefully picked. So I like to keep those true to life. So I'm probably going to go in with maybe natural 1 for this one. I'm going to up my shadows just a little bit. Use the auto transform, bring this crop in a little bit more centered, and that would be the before and after. Very simple and effective and beautiful. Now for a photo like this, because it's a little bit more moody, I am probably going to go a little bit different, more on the film side. I could just paste it and you would have something like that, but I'm going to use a little bit stronger of a preset. I'm going to go in with number 9 and lift the shadows a little bit more again. I might make it a tad bit warmer. We'll do the auto transform, rotate it just ever slightly, and then there you have the before and after. And you can also play with the shadow color, of course. If you go back into the color grading and go around the wheel, you can pick which color you kind of prefer more. I'm going to leave this at like a nice green color and we'll be done. All right, another moment where I feel like I'm gonna go in with a good film edit. So I'm gonna go in, let's see, 6, 7. I think I'm gonna start with 7 as the base, and then we're just gonna warm that up with the temperature. And I'm gonna warm it up to where, for this one, where I like the background. And then I'm gonna decrease the orange to kind of balance out the skin being a little bit saturated. Maybe a little bit warmer, slight crop inward, and there is the before and after. All right, I feel like studio photos can go so many different ways because the lighting is just very good, and it can, I don't know, I feel like any of these presets would look totally fine. I could go clean with a little bit of blue shadows. I could go super bright. I could do something a little bit more film heavy. Honestly, I don't know what to pick with this one. I kind of like number 8 on it. I like the warmth on her skin, and that's just a very quick and easy before and after. All right, we have a little bit of indoor lighting here. Definitely think that this set odes to some film. So I think we're gonna go with, I kind of like 8 again, but needs to be slightly cooler and maybe a little bit more towards the green. There we go. Okay, So here's the raw. I had already probably played with these before and forgot to reset them. All right, so I'm gonna keep this one very bright and neutral. So I'm gonna go with number, I'm gonna go with 4. And the only thing I'm gonna tweak on this is the green. I'm going to slightly desaturate it. And then there's before and after. This one I'm definitely gonna go a little heavier on the edit. I think number 9. And then I'm gonna increase the contrast, decrease exposure, take the tint a little bit towards the pink side, and take down the temperature. So there's before and after for that. Okay, I think 6, maybe. No, let's do 9. 9, and I'm going to increase the intensity to about 125%, decrease exposure a little bit, decrease the tint, and there you go. All right, so for this one, I definitely want to mute the greens a little bit, so I'm going to go in with number 5. Okay, so far, this has been so easy. I feel like I have barely tweaked anything. All right. Crop this in. Shooting in the cities, mad respect to those who do it, because I could not deal with constantly having to edit out stuff in the road, because I have to do it. I'd probably get rid of the sign too, but that's just me. All right, let's see. I think I'm gonna go 9 for this too, and just warm it up and make it a little bit more pink. Increase exposure slightly, and there we go. Actually, for the shadows on this, I'm also gonna change them to be a little warmer. Right about there. All right, beautiful. I love museum lighting so much. I'm gonna go, I think, with number 7 on this, and I'm gonna increase the intensity about 130%. Auto straighten. I'm gonna decrease the exposure quite a bit here, just because I love the highlights on the girl in that dress. So there's the before and after. I could probably paste this one here, but it does need a little tweaking. It's a little too warm. That looks pretty good. Ooh, so we have some really beautiful window lighting here. I'm definitely going in with number 6 and increasing the intensity and really leaning into the highlights here. So I think, I can't decide. I feel like I could either go really low. Yeah, I'm gonna go low. Super low on the highlights. I'm gonna increase exposure a little bit, change the temperature cooler, and then we have before and after. Okay, I can't tell if this was taken with flash or not. The lighting is just, okay, it looks probably just like a cloudy day, but the lighting is stunning. I think I'm gonna do black and white and go editorial on this one. I love just the creaminess and the starkness. For this photo, I'm gonna keep it more natural. I think I'm gonna go with number 2, a little bit more intensity, and we'll do that. Well, auto transform doesn't work great for this one. I'm just gonna vertically lift it a little bit and then constrain the crop and bring this in. All right, so there we've got before and after. Beautiful. All right, another street picture. I think this one definitely, I'm gonna do a little bit on the more edited side as well, probably going back in with number 9. And just warming this up, cropping that in, and there you go. Okay, this is very pretty. I already can tell there's going to be a lot going on with the greens here, but I kind of want to make this a little bit more faded. I think I'm going to go in with number 7 to start with. I'm going to increase it slightly, maybe 120%, up the exposure, and then we're gonna have to change the greens here because it doesn't look great. the greens are definitely too cool. So I'm gonna bring the hue down and desaturate the greens a little bit. And I might make it a tiny bit warmer still. There we go. There's your before and after. Actually, I'm also gonna change the shadows slightly warmer. Right there. That's perfect. Ooh, this one, I think I'm gonna do Ilford. Yep. Beautiful. These photos are so good. I love everybody's submissions. All right, so this picture, I already can tell the lighting could go a lot of different ways. You can go with some of the natural ones. You can go with the bright ones, some more of the film ones. I think I kind of want a little bit of a warmth to this, so I think I'm going to start with 6. Auto transform. I'm going to crop this in a little bit and just increase the contrast and then maybe decrease the yellows saturation a little bit. So there we go. And then for this one, I'm going to do another black and white. I'm going to crop that in, and just based off of the way that the lighting is going, I'm going to go in with faded because that just looks absolutely stunning. All right, we have another ocean picture. Ocean photos I like to do number 2 with because it just keeps things natural, keeps things blue. You could also change the hue of the blue if you wanted. This one is probably registering mostly as aqua, but I kind of like it right where it's at there. So I'm gonna keep it as is. This photo, I definitely want kind of warm, creamy highlights. So I'm gonna do number 6, and then I'm gonna leave it at 100% opacity, and I'm just gonna decrease the hue of the greens slightly more warm, and then decrease their saturation. And then also, here's another example of the male shirt pinging blue even though it's white. So I'm gonna decrease the blue slightly, and there's before and after. Okay, so this photo is looking super low contrast. It's probably just because rain, fog, mist, etc. So it's definitely going to need a little bit of tweaking regardless of what we put on. I think I'm going to use... 4 looks very beautiful. I like the warmth in 6th. I think I might go with 4. I'm going to increase the intensity, decrease exposure, increase temperature. And there we have that one. Oh my goodness, this is so good. This definitely has to be black and white, and it's going to be the old film one with the slightly warmer shadows to it. Just one click right there. All right, so for this photo, I'm going to go with number 9. I'm going to increase the intensity around 125%. I'll increase my exposure, and then the greens I'm going to be messing with here. So I think I want them to be on the warmer side, and I'll probably actually make the yellows a little bit on the warmer side too. And then I'm going to change the shadows to be kind of more like a yellow peachy color, and then I'll decrease the temperature slightly, very slightly, and there we have it, before and after. And then this is from the same scene, so we can just paste those same effects on there. All right, we have a fun flash photo. Do a little spot removal right there, and flash is going to be my go-to for number 8. So I like that as is. If I wanted it to be a little less green, I can change the tint and temperature a little bit, but I think that looks great. All right, we have a nice sunset photo. So I think I'm gonna go with number 6 again and make these creamy and warm. Beautiful. I'm not gonna tweak that at all because their skin looks great and the sunset looks great. All right, so we have this photo. It's a little bit warm, or it's a little bit cool. I'm seeing a lot of like purple and blues in the like clothing. So this one's gonna need to be warmed up a little bit, but I think I'm gonna do I think I might start with 9. And as you can see, like, it just doesn't look right. That's just because of the temperature. If I bring up the warmth here, now all of a sudden it looks fine. I'm going to decrease the tint as well, decrease my exposure, and there we have it. All right, we have a harsh lighting direct sun photo, so I'm going to go in with number 5. I might increase the intensity of the preset, and then I'll decrease the contrast. Do a rotate and crop, and then I'll probably decrease the exposure slightly, and there we have it. That just balanced out the greens and the oranges in the skin a lot with that direct sun. More beach photos. So this one I'm going to do neutral 2, increase intensity, increase the shadows. This one's a little bit more edgy in just the style of the photo, so I will do number 9 on this one, and then I just need to increase the warmth quite a bit to match the scene. Okay, interesting ambient lighting, street lighting. This one definitely is gonna have to go with one of the film ones, I feel like. Actually, I think I'm going to keep this really natural, and I'm going to go with number 3 and just increase the preset and auto transform. And I like that one. I like keeping it really simple to the environment. All right, heavy greens. Neutral 2 is my go-to. I'm going to warm up the image first, and then I'm going to change the tint to slightly pink. You can really see how like the tint changes so much. Like, I don't even feel like I have to go in and change the hue of the green, because just messing with the temperature and the tint changed that for good. All right, another flash picture. Have to do our little removal first. Oop, that didn't work. Okay, going in with number 8. I'm going to increase the intensity a little bit. Go for a really bold flash look, decreasing the highlights, increasing the exposure, auto transforming. There you have it. Beautiful scene. I'm gonna go, I could do this one natural, and I would just increase the tint and decrease the temperature, and it would just look really nice and subtle. But I think I'm going to duplicate it and also put number 9 on it, something a little bit more intense and like story-ish. We're also going to increase the tint and decrease the temperature. So now you have kind of the difference between like the more natural one and the more intense one. A lot of stuff differing in the tone curves there. All right, so I have a window here, and generally I do number 6. I'm seeing that this photo might be a little bit cooler than how I normally shoot, so I'm going to start with just increasing the temperature, and we'll auto transform this photo. And I think I'm going to change the color grading a little bit. So I'm going to bring the shadows a little stronger, but I'm going to change them to be more of a warm color, I think. There we go. So there's the before and after for that one. All right, we have this beautiful hazy photo. I am going to probably do something more intense for this as well, just because the lighting is so cool. These all look really cool at first glance, so they're not looking amazing. But I'm going to start with 6, increase the intensity, and then just warm up the white balance and the tint, and then we'll have a better photo. And then I might change the color grading a little bit to make this slightly warmer, like a warmer green. And there we go. Okay, this photo I'm definitely going to keep on the clean side. So I think maybe either 4 or 1. I'll do 1 for this one. And I'm just going to increase the shadows for her face, decrease the highlights a little bit. There you have a very simple edit. We're outside in greens again at a ceremony, so by now you probably know what I'm going to say. I'm going to go with number 2. Decrease exposure a little bit, increase warmth. There's your before and after. All right, this is evening lighting, which is notorious for being a little bit too cool, just to kind of correct, you know, that like strange ambient lighting. This is definitely blue hour, so I'll probably do, let's do number 8 starting out, because 8 has a lot of warmth added to it. We're still gonna have to up the temperature though, and then increase the exposure. And then I'll probably warm up the greens a little bit in the background. About right there. Okay, so a good flash picture. I think normally I would do 8 on this, which would look totally fine. It definitely enhances the moment. But I think I'm also going to duplicate this with 9 and a little bit more intense, and then warm it up so I can have a moment that's like a little bit more vintage. Then I'm going to just warm up the shadows to a little bit more of a yellow-green. So we can either have this one, which is more similar to natural, and then we have this one that's a little bit deeper and has like more going on with the shadows. Another cool black and white, I think I'm gonna, or sorry, another cool photo I'm gonna put in black and white. I'm gonna do probably old film for this one, and then we're gonna increase the shadows just slightly, and then I'll probably go in with the brush and bring a little bit more brightness in the face. Just about like that. I'm also going to put this one in black and white, and I think I'm going to do regular Ilford with a little bit of a higher intensity. Crop that in. Adorable. Alright, so we have more ambient street lighting. I'm going to go pretty neutral on this one. I'm going to do number 3, leave it at 100, bring the temperature down. This one is going to be very subtle, but I feel like it just fixes it enough. Probably do number 9 on this one. Just slight more warmth. Just adds like this really beautiful creaminess to the photo. I'm gonna go number 5 on this one. Increase the intensity like 115%. Up the exposure. Auto straighten. Gonna be making sure that his shirt isn't too blue, which it is pinging as blue, so we're gonna desaturate that. And we're gonna crop it in. Get rid of any little dots. And there's your before and after. Actually, I might even bring that in a little bit more. Something like that. Well, now we have another cropped version, so I'm gonna put this one in black and white. We'll do Ilford HP5, and I'm gonna crop this one in real heavy. I'm gonna go soft for this one. I think just natural 2 with a little bit of an intenser application, 130%. You can see it really softens out the highlights on her face there. I'm gonna decrease the highlights a little bit, but then that's it. I love how vintage the scene is here, so I'm definitely gonna keep this in the film presets. I'm gonna do number 7 because I love the fade, and then we're gonna warm it and decrease the tint. And then I'm also going to change the shadows a little warmer. Just about there. Okay. More outdoor photos. I think I might do this one in documentary. I just sometimes get the urge to do that. I'm gonna decrease the highlights a little bit. Just keep it super simple. All right, a beautiful ocean photo in Milos. I'm gonna do neutral 2 here. Increase the intensity a little bit, up the exposure. Now you can either keep it cool if that's your style, or I'm gonna warm it up a little bit to about right there. And that looks beautiful. Lots of green here. Immediately I'm going in for number 5. I'm gonna warm it up a little bit and probably just leave it like that. I love what it did to the grass, just making it a little more vintage and focusing on the couple. Going in, let's see, I think I'm gonna do 7 here, another faded one, and then just warm it up. Perfect. I'm gonna do 6 with pretty high intensity. Do 140%. Keeping with that just creamy, good sunset light. This is a great in-between shot. I'm gonna crop it in really heavy and do Ilford. Decrease the grain a little bit and decrease the exposure. Give this photo a rotate, and then I'm gonna try and keep this one a little warmer, I think. So I'm gonna go in with 6 and increase the temperature. And there we have it. And that preset already took care of a lot of the blue in his jacket. I'm gonna go with number 7 on this one. Decrease exposure, increase temperature, and I'm going to add a little bit back of the purples and blues that were in the mountains in the back. This one I'm going to keep more natural. I'll do number 1 with more intensity, increased exposure, increased warmth. I'm also going to lift the shadows a little bit and crop that in. And there you go, before and after. Very clean, perfect for a wedding. I think this one is also gonna stay, well, actually, maybe I'll do 6 for this one. Warm it up a little bit, and then I'm gonna decrease the yellow slightly. Maybe change the shadows to be a little warmer as well. This is probably like the definition of perfect lighting, honestly. That is incredible. I'm gonna do 2 different ones for this one. I'll do 6, which is kind of warmer and creamier, and I'll decrease the greens a little bit. So there you can see that preset. Also the blues, I'm gonna make a little bit more on the like purpley blue side, kind of match the raw photo a little bit more. Actually, I love this photo in this edit so much, I'm just gonna leave it at this. All right, another ocean photo, or lake, I guess. We're going with natural 2, a little bit more intensity, decreasing exposure, increasing temperature. This one will be very natural and true to life, just with a little bit of a tweak. And then I can even probably paste this one. Just up the exposure. Rotate, increase shadows a little bit. There you go. I'm gonna change this blue also a little bit back more towards ocean color. Right about there. Cute little flash photo moment. You know what I'm going in with, number 8. Going to decrease my exposure, change my tint a little bit more pink, and there you go. The colors for this one are definitely remaining natural, so we're going in with number 2. decreasing exposure slightly, and there you have a beautiful edit. Very simple, but totally just what the photo needed. All right, we have more indoor lighting, so I feel like with this one or two just really does everything that the photo needs, so I'm probably just gonna paste 2 and keep this one extremely natural, but you can see it just like, it just gives it what it needs. All right, this one, immediately I'm thinking 6 with a little bit more intensity and then tint going towards the green side. That's perfect. Okay, this is a super fun flash one, which I'm definitely gonna make more old style. So I'm gonna put this one on old film, decrease the grain, decrease the exposure, decrease contrast a little bit, and highlights. And there we go. Okay, this photo is looking a little cool. I see a lot of blues kind of in her dress and his jacket. So I'm gonna start with 6 and just warm up the photo. Auto transform, and we'll see if there's anything in the color mixer. There's actually some green picking up on her dress, so I'm gonna be desaturating the green, as well as the aqua is picking up on her dress, so I'm desaturating aqua. And there's a very simple before and after. Another very green photo means I'm sticking with number 2. A little bit more intensity for this one. Decreasing exposure, increasing temperature, increasing tint towards pink. I'm gonna decrease the exposure actually a little bit more. Now you can just see those greens are really nice and balanced. I love this photo. I love the lighting. All right, I feel like I might start with number 3 and just increase the warmth of this, but really decrease the exposure, so it's like very dramatic. I might actually go in with something a little bit more heavy, like 7. Decrease exposure again, increase temperature and tint a little bit. And then if you want to get rid of the shadow color, you could just bring this back towards the center. And there you have. Ooh, I love that. That's beautiful. Just enough. So I feel like I could either keep this photo a little bit more on the clean side and just use number 2, but I think I'm actually going to go with number 6 because I want it to be a little bit warmer. I'm going to increase the intensity, decrease exposure and highlights, and warm it up, and then drop the tint. Here's a fun little reception shot. I'm not gonna crop it, actually. I'm gonna rotate it a little bit, but it's very in the moment and fun. I think number 8 would work well for this one if I wanted it in color, but this is kind of the moment, a moment where I would just use documentary if I was putting it in black and white. All right, I think for these photos, I'm gonna edit them a little different. I'm gonna start a little more moody with the first one. So this is number 9. You can have a before and after. I might actually apply that a little more intense and then change the shadow color a little warmer. About so. Perfect. And then I'm gonna fade this one a little bit more by putting on number 5. Increasing it a little bit more, decreasing exposure, and it just kind of subdues the photo. All right, here we have a very cool purpley blue kind of photo that has a lot of green in it, so this is gonna need a little tweak. I think I'm gonna do number 1 and just keep this one very simple, but it's gonna have to be warmed up a ton. It's also going to have to be desaturated in some of the colors. So the greens are going to have to go down. Yellows also have to go down some. And then they're going to be warmed up. And cropped in. And then that would be the before and after. This is a very beautiful, simple wedding portrait that I think I'm just gonna stick to number 2 and warm up a little bit and change the shadows a little more warm, and that's the before and after. Another one for number 1 with a little bit more intensity, decreased exposure, increased warmth. I might even lift the shadows in this a little bit. All right, this photo in the woods, I think I'm gonna decrease the intensity a little bit with number 5. I'll warm it up, sorry, that was my dog. Warm it up a little bit and change their orange hues a little bit more red. And there you have that before and after. Here we have just a very clean detail shot, so I'll do number 4 for this one. A little stronger intensity, definitely warm it up and lower the tint a little bit more green, increase the shadows. All right, we have a pretty intense sunset here. I think I'm gonna go in stronger with this one with number 8. And then just change the color grading with this one just a little bit, making it kind of more of like this blue color. All right, we have another very high contrast direct lighting for this one, so kind of similar to, what photo was it? I'll find it. Okay, similar to this photo, which was also direct sunlight. I'm gonna do number 5. I'm gonna increase the intensity a little bit, and then we're gonna have to do some work here. So this blue, or this dress, sorry, is picking up so much blue. We're decreasing that a lot. I'm also gonna be decreasing the contrast quite a bit, as well as the oranges need to be toned down, and they also need to be made a little bit less red. We'll crop that in, and then you've got before and after. Okay, windows are always the best for this type of edit. I think I'm gonna do, actually, I might do number 9. I might do something a little bit stronger here. I am gonna tweak the colors because I don't love kind of the more yellow on this one. But I'm gonna crop that in, decrease the exposure, increase tint towards pink, decrease temperature towards blue, increase the shadows a little bit, and then there you have before and after. Another beach photo. This one looks like the sun's already set. You're not going to get much color in the water, but I am just going to keep it clean. So I'm going to do number 2 neutral, a little bit more intensity, increase the shadows on that, and maybe also the saturation just a little bit, kind of bringing the photo back to life. All right, we've got some direct flash here that I'm going to use editorial on with a little bit stronger because it looks like the flash wasn't really that intense. So I'm pasting that and then just increasing the exposure quite a bit. And now you have this really stark, crisp black and white. All right, this photo, I'm gonna try and keep simple. I'm basically gonna base this not off of the colors, but based off of the texture and the shadows. So I think I'm gonna do number 6. A little bit more intensity and just leave it like that. All right, this photo is also pretty on the cool side. I would say that's probably about normal white balance there. So we're gonna have to warm this one up. I'm gonna leave this one natural as well. I'm gonna do number 2 with quite a bit of high intensity because we're losing a lot of detail with the sun flare. Also going to increase the contrast, decrease exposure, increase temperature quite a bit, and then I'm going to change the hues of the green. This would be a photo where if you had the time and wanted to change stuff, in the color mixer, you have the oranges here where you can see it's pinging the couple and this, I guess, kind of lack of grass in the background. But you could very easily go into the masking tool and change the hue of the orange only for that grass patch so that you could have it really blend into the grass, but without obviously having that happen to their faces. I'm not going to do that for the sake of this is not my photo, but that would be something that you could do here. A little bit of a more vintage photo. Sorry, I'm cropping her out. I just want to center the bride a little bit more. I'm going to do number 9 and decrease the exposure on this. And I'm also going to take the shadows off of this photo and then make the tint a little bit more green. All right, we have another window photo. I'm going in with number 6, a little bit stronger, a little bit more exposure, auto straighten, crop in. And then also, I think his jacket's supposed to be gray. So I am going to go down to color mixer and decrease aqua and green. Kind of try and bring those a little bit more to like a natural gray color versus what it's at, which is kind of like a strange green color right now. Just based off of the window lighting. There we go. That helps quite a bit. All right, last few images. I'm gonna go probably, if I did a black and white with this one, I think I would do HP5 with increased contrast. And honestly, that's about it. I love the way that it's gonna just blur all the highlights together. This is a very simple photo that I would keep very minimal personally. So I'm gonna do number 2. But I do want to have a little bit stronger of an edit, so I'm going to increase that to about 140%, and then I'm going to warm up the greens a little bit. All right, we have a good indoor photo here with lots of orange. This will be a good example if you wanted to keep it natural. All I'm going to do really is decrease the temperature. And there you have a good before and after. All right, here we have some interesting lighting. It's pretty dark, so I'm gonna have to change that some. I'm gonna go in with number 8, I think, and increase the intensity slightly. We're gonna be increasing the shadows and increasing the exposure quite a bit. I'm gonna decrease the highlights here. Auto straighten this, and here we have a cute before and after. Alright, we're cropping that one in, we're keeping this one neutral. I'm applying a little bit more intensity since this image doesn't really have a lot of data. Decreasing exposure, increasing temperature. There we go, very easy. Alright, we're gonna crop this one down. I feel like I'm going rapid fire now. Cropping that one down. I'm going a little bit heavier with this one with number 8, but changing the tint to be more pink and more blue. And there you have before and after. Yeah, this one was definitely taken after the sun went down. I think I'm going to go in with number 9 for this one, though. Something a little bit more intense, but we're going to be decreasing the blues in his shirt and her dress. Wow, that's a lot. And then we're going to be warming this one up quite a bit. And taking the tint down, increasing exposure again. I'm going to bring the clarity back up. And there's before and after. Another natural elopement one. This is going to be number 2 with a little bit more intensity. And before and after. Make that a little bit more pink. All right, we're gonna end this one with a indoor ballroom one. So for a fun little moment like this, I'm just gonna bring in for heavy crop. I'll include their reflection in the glass. And I'm gonna put this one on Ilford and removing the grain quite a bit. Just feel like it really focuses in on the moment and the smiles. It's really cute. I could also just stick with like, I'll duplicate this and reset the cropping. I could stick with something a little bit more natural, which unfortunately no photographer likes blue purple lights on the wall, so we're gonna have to just work with that. But I could stick with doing this a little bit more natural, bringing down temperature, bringing down the tint, decreasing the oranges a little bit, making them slightly more on the yellow side. And there we have that. Well, it's not giving me a before and after now, but let me copy this. Okay, so there we have a before and after for the lighting there. Okay, that's everything. We went through so many photos. I feel like by now you should know what the presets look like. You should know what you're getting into and how they're going to work on my photos and your photos. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Otherwise, I can't wait to see these photos applied. And also, please tag me in any of the photos that you do share with them. I would love to promote your work and share the photos and just kind of chat with you about your experience as well. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and let me know if you have any questions.